All right, so we're back, and we might get Craig tonight. We might not. We've got our fingers and paws crossed that he'll be showing up shortly. Maybe so, maybe not. But we were having a discussion about crypto, and honestly, it just felt better to include all you good people in it. So we're talking about the accessibility, and basically, well, I mean, Steve here, he had just said that crypto's kind of like a commodity as opposed to something that you might have like a legitimate trade good where getting a Bitcoin is kind of like carrying around a bar of gold bullion, and that's really an apt comparison in my opinion.
Well,
So
that's kind of the issue. Is don't get me wrong. Like Bitcoin will grow in value, but it probably won't grow in value as much as other coins. Now you start looking at something like Ethereum, and the technology behind Ethereum is superior from a crypto standard, right? They've got the ERC20 tokens, they've got a lot of stuff associated with it. Ethereum is a very good technology, but I actually don't expect that to really go anywhere or take off. What I expect is I do expect cryptocurrency to evolve to the point where it's our common currency, and the only one that's in the running for that as to what we would use is going to be Doge. And the reason for that is not because, I mean, why is it that a meme coin with ridiculous numbers of units in circulation is going to be the one that will be what we commonly trade as? It is the closest to what we would consider a normal value, right? It is the closest to a usable unit of currency in terms of the rest of the other coins out there. So
sure,
you're
it's
never
one
going
at
to be able to trade a full.
what something like 40 cents a coin right now, something like that. I think.
I think it's 30 cents a coin last I saw. So Musk is pumping it, and my guess is because Musk wants to move to a point where he's no longer bound by the rules of, you know, the earthly dictatorships that be. And so I fully support Musk in his goals and his endeavors there. But when it comes to why is he pumping Doge? I mean, he's pumping Bitcoin as well, but why is he pumping Doge? It's because Doge is pretty close to the value of a dollar, which means that if you were to talk about getting to a point where you wanted to trade something, if it was analogous to a dollar in terms of overall price, then it makes it very easy to conduct commerce with those kinds of value point systems. Whereas, you know, if I have to start trading a Satoshi, which is what 1 times 10 to the minus 8 Bitcoins, in order to get a unit of value, and we're at 10 to the fifth right now in terms of value for Bitcoins, so we're at roughly 300, 400 Satoshis in order to get an equivalent of a dollar. That
So we're
is not a that is not a conceivable that's not a transparent currency, whereas Doge is going to be a lot closer. So I
Well, yeah, I mean,
suspect
that's
Doge will
even
take
taking it
off.
kind of farther above and beyond the comparison of Celsius versus Fahrenheit. I mean, at least there you've got a straight up conversion where this one's like two or three steps before you can even kind of understand where the two
Right.
legitimately meet.
So if Musk was smart, what he'd be doing is he'd be pumping Bitcoin, or sorry, Doge until it's roughly about the cost of a dollar, and then he will accept it in Doge coins, not because he's expecting Doge to go to the same level as Bitcoin. And if you invest in Doge thinking you're going to get $50,000 out of a Doge coin, that's ridiculous. But it is definitely feasible to get a dollar out of it. I wish I'd kept my Doges from a few months ago, but I try to be a short-term investor, which is why I switched over to short strategies in the market as a whole.
Oh, and just
But
as an update, since we are talking about the market, GameStop, as of this weekend, hit a low of 154.69. So it's genuinely become a pretty safe stock, as well with the new.
no. I do not consider that. No, do not consider it to be safe. The Wall Street bet guys, they are a pump and dump scheme at this point. Anything
True.
that they tell you to, they advise you to invest in, you should not. Well, if you want to, and you happen to be, the problem with pump and dumps is you got to be first on, last off. And so I suspect that these things are being coordinated at the higher levels. But I make money off the Wall Street bet guys stock picks, but I don't make money on the rise, and that's because it's too risky. You can't pick how high it's going to go. You can't pick, but you can determine once it gets to its peak. Once the rocket emojis show up, you can absolutely say, okay, I'm going to short this stock, and in 2, 3, 4 days, you'll usually make a profit. Again, not financial advice, but as soon as they show up on the forums pumping your stock, it's a pretty good idea that whatever the value is of that stock, it's overinflated. And I've identified their primary strategy, so I can usually pick out the stocks that they're pumping and get in and get out where I want. There's some mistakes I've made along the way, but nothing where I'm actually left holding a bag. It's just I didn't get out as soon as I should have, or I'm holding it longer than I wanted to. I actually have worse stock picks that I made on my own, where I was betting on them going up over the long term, and they just basically didn't. But realistically, I would not invest in GameStop.
I don't know. Based on what I've seen, it actually seems like where it is now, if you can get it between 1 and 150, I mean, don't go throwing a shitload of money at it, but it might actually be a worthwhile investment from, this label's point of view, because they've got some new people in at the board and a new head that actually wants to do something with all of this.
So the one thing that can be said about GameStop is it is unique. It has like no debt, so they use this price to their share price to liquidate a whole bunch of debt, and so they actually are a cash flush company, which is good, right? They made a very smart choice, but at the same time, in terms of a stock investment, I would not consider it a long term. Like it is way overvalued. It is way
I don't know
overvalued.
if I would say it's way overvalued. I would agree that it is overvalued. We kind of have to wait and see how this plays out. It may end up that it
I
is overvalued. It
suppose
may end up that it was a good call. We really will have to just kind of wait and see how this one goes for an answer
if
to
it
that.
was around $30,
Oh,
I
yeah,
would
it'd be
say
an instant buy, especially with the plans
it
they got in
would.
the works.
But again, don't be expecting a significant return. Now, if you watch the fluctuations, you can go in, but I do not expect it to grow in a natural sense as your stock or your 401k portfolio would over a really long term. It's still a short term product, and you should consider it as such.
Yeah, well,
But
day traders are kind of cancer.
ah,
I mean,
that's
not
so
not
mean.
fully, just kind of, just a little.
Everybody's just trying to make a little bit of money.
Well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when you try and make a whole lot of money really fast, you can end up doing some really shitty things or some really
I,
stupid things.
the issue tends to be that some people will attempt to over leverage the market, so they'll be selling. So I understand why they take issue with the shorts, which is always what their war is against, this imaginary shorts. As somebody who takes short positions on the stocks that they hold, that is not because I want the stock to fail. It's that I also understand that a lot of these people, it's going to, right? Like I understand it's a pump and dump. I understand that it's going to go up to ridiculously high values. I understand that the stock is overvalued, and I will take a fraction of the price as it drops because I'm in there to make money,
Well, you have to
just like the
remember
kids
one
who are
thing
jumping
though.
in on the pump and dump side.
Your last name isn't Berkshire, Hathaway, or Clinton, so you're not in the same position.
That's true. That's true. But I mean, it is one of those things where they do seem to hate the shorts, and the shorts are just there trying to make money. They're no worse off than the people who are sitting there trying to make money. Like the thing we got to understand about the stock market is realistically any stock that is traded on the stock market is not benefiting the company if its price goes up or its price goes down. And the prices will go up and down based on the decisions that management has, because the stockholders are the people who are sitting there and evaluating that value, right? And so it responds essentially to good decisions, bad decisions, good news, bad news.
Sure.
So that's just word of caution. I would not look at it as a long-term store of value.
Now, that being said,
Whoa.
I will throw out a small piece of investing advice from a completely anonymous cat on the internet that has no background in any of this. I'd say Nokia is a good stock. But I say that on the back of some news that came out at the end of last year.
What?
Nokia
Go
is going
ahead.
to be building the first lunar cell network. So, once that build out starts, they're going to get some money in. I mean, they're going to be flush with cash because people are going to be interested. So maybe throw a little bit of money at it. I've thrown a little over $100 at it, and I haven't lost anything. I got it at about $4. It's a little over $4. It's like 4.18 right now. So not out that much, not in that much, and I think it'll be. I think once that lunar network actually begins production, we'll start seeing something interesting happen with it.
I mean, it's possible. I don't know, right? Like, again, nobody should take any stock advice from me. They really shouldn't.
Probably any of
I
us.
have a tendency to make mistakes. I have one mistake that I keep in my portfolio predominantly to remind me not to be emotional, because I put it as a way too large proportion of my portfolio, and I pay the consequence every single time it goes up or down, and it never, like, it's basically in a perpetual state of loss. Now, the hope for me is that someday there will be a point of news and I will hold it long enough that that goes up, but man, let me tell you, your stomach ends up in your throat. And the point is not that, not anything other than you. What's that?
You own some Kmart stock?
No, I do biotech, because biotech is fun, but you will end up owing them your kidneys. They biotech. So a lot of times you'll see people sit there and talk about how profitable biotech is to own, and that may be true in the larger sense, but biotech is very much in the same kind of problematic strain as a lot of the marijuana stocks. So the marijuana stocks tend to go press release to press release without actually building a lot of value to them. And so if you are looking for short-term positions, biotech's the way to go. But I put in for a stock, it was Immunome, and they had this crazy pre-market. And I actually bought in, and I was up 20 some odd % on it, and I should have sold, but I didn't want to waste a day trade. What they had found was they had found 3 or so of the antibodies. They had found a collection of 3 antibodies using their technology of COVID that would identify appropriately within the human body all 3 strains that were active at the time. So basically, they found something they found the antibodies that would be resistant to all forms of COVID, which is a crazy, amazing discovery.
Oh, yeah.
So they were going bonkers pre-market, and I bought into them pre-market, and they went up pre-market, and then the market opened and everybody cashed out, and I was left holding the bag.
That's
so
annoying.
I mean, I still support Immunome as a stock. I still support it as a stock. It is a DARPA-funded project. That's actually where they got their seed money. Their entire thing is, I think it was bioweapons, is they were supposed to be bioweapon detection stuff. I think that's what it was when I read into it.
Isn't that
can't
funny?
remember.
Ironic.
Yeah. So that was like, they were supposed to be rapid. They're gearing towards rapid response biotech stuff. So I am still a big fan of them.
I mean,
as
if they're
a company.
still pulling in government money, then it's probably not an unwise investment.
No, and that's kind of where I'm sitting. But at the same time, I spent way too much on it. And then when all of a sudden it dipped, I was like, oh, I'm going to average down. You'll see people talk about averaging down on their stocks. And so now, like, a larger than what I would want portion of my portfolio is tied up in them. So when they sink, which they did, for reasons that I don't understand yet, because nobody's actually come up with a reason for it yet, I end up holding the bag. And it makes my account drop. It puts my margin at risk. Like, they're not tanking. They're a 20 some odd dollar stock now, but I bought them at 60. So just to give you an idea of how much
rough.
pain I feel.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's shitty.
yeah. So also why I do shorts instead of longs at this point, because shorts are more reliably profitable in the short term. So
hence the name, right? Oh, hey, it looks like we've got a guest.
Gentlemen. Is that a Kraggles?
Pleasure to have you, sir.
Happy to be here.
Are you sure? Kreggles, I'm gonna have to hit you up because I'm having some problems with my heated bed. What temperature do you print PLA at?
I'm sorry, I can't help you with your marital problems.
Oh, that bed's spicy.
Okay.
What temperatures do you go for PLA at?
PLA? You don't need a heated bed for PLA.
I know you don't
Print.
need.
Slow. Print slow. I guess you could go with like 50C, maybe, or 100C. I mean, 100 seems a little bit excessive, but yeah. They'll probably stick at 100.
I've been going 65 and I haven't had any problems.
Yeah.
But I spent Friday fine tuning a lot of the processes because I wanted to get some of my blobs and zits out and some of my my oozing under control. And it seems
so oozing is going to be a problem. That's just a general problem with plastics, largely because the systems are not optimized for a particular grade or a particular type of plastic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I'm sure that's true.
Well, so this actually was an entrepreneurial challenge thing that me and a couple other colleagues in the lab did. Was just basically designing, well, not just designing printers, but like designing the software to be able to handle specific parameters based on rheology. And suffice to say, that means you have to actually like write the software instead of doing your research.
No,
which means you don't do it
for your materials and your print heads and all that. I take it.
Sorry.
You gotta customize your software then for your prints, your materials, and all that. I imagine.
Well, I mean,
so if there, you can basically you can. So, what's your retraction set to? That's one of those parameters that you can find inside your slicer.
So that was actually the primary parameter that I was futzing with.
Yeah.
And I started off. I think it started off with like 3 or something like that. I got up to 5 with Repetier host.
Yeah.
And then I chose to switch over to Cura because I wanted to try to turn on coast settings because I was still getting blobs.
Right.
So I switched over to coasting setting, and just Repetier doesn't have the same level of depth in terms of settings control as Cura. So I was trying to go back to Cura, but it does have a beautiful terminal interface.
I was gonna say it has a fantastic UI.
It does. It does. And it is a great terminal interface, which I don't seem to get a terminal interface in Cura.
You can use the Cura slicer in Repetier.
Yes, but it doesn't import all of the settings.
Correct.
So what ends up happening is all of the fine tuning. If I'm trying to fine tune print, like I want to do coasting.
Well, here's the thing: if you produce the G code, then it'll use the G code.
Right, but that requires effort.
Well, all that requires is saving a file.
Effort requires effort. A lot of effort.
I don't know if a lot is exactly the right term to describe the amount of effort necessary.
That is, like, all right, look, I'm an engineer, but that is fucking lazy.
I mean, I'm lazy, and that even sounds lazy to me. So.
Work smarter, not harder.
I feel like this. If and this will be great for the audience that I think we're dealing with here. If Bill Gates was given a choice between a competent, a smart engineer and a lazy engineer, and guess who he chose?
The lazy engineer every time. Yep.
Why? Because they get it done cheaper and easier.
That's exactly right.
Sometimes, oddly enough, smarter.
I have a constant debate with my well, actually not a constant debate with my manager. He's kind of on board with me. But basically, I'm able to get like 7 tasks done in the time that normal engineers get 1, and that's because I'm like, yeah, punctuation doesn't matter. Yep, that doesn't matter.
Okay,
this doesn't matter.
Well, nothing wrong with paring down
publishing in academia, that will bite you in the ass because an editor isn't going to look at your kind of crayon writing and go, "Wow, I'm totally going to spend the time to edit all the shit out of this."
Well, that's great, but I don't work in academia. I actually
you're getting a degree that's going to possibly require publication.
As was stated
as you've already found out with the way that your mathematical
he's just a dick.
Syntax
He's just a dick.
Sucks. I'm telling you, he was absolutely right with the math.
I'm sure.
Do not use a raised dot
was.
unless you're using a dot operator.
However, I told my boss that, and he's like, "What the fuck did you do to piss him off?" And I was just like, "Well, look, his book was wrong in so many places." And
hold on. Is it his book or is it the book he's using?
It's his book.
That's funny.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
That's so much
It was
fun.
wrong.
You're sitting there pissing on his baby. That's beautiful.
If he wasn't,
Look, it's fucking ugly. It's my kid.
Oh my god! Let me tell you, the last homework set that we did, like I was about to sit there, my buddy's sitting there, and we're working on this thing, and he put these tables in, and they're supposed to be like risk assessment tables or whatever it is, and he clearly pulled them out of the literature, but they are the world's shittiest organization. They're written terribly. Like what the information is in them is written terribly.
You made the mistake of being honest. Then I take it.
It's not a mistake. It's just a gift that keeps on giving every time I get my homework back.
I mean, I'm entertained either way, so I'm not really seeing a downside here.
I know you are, but yeah. So I understand that, but it's the lazy engineers are work smarter, not harder, and you get awards.
That
Work harder, not smarter, and you don't.
So if you work smarter and harder, you get better awards.
No, you don't. No, if it takes you twice as long to do something as it does me, then I win.
Smarter and harder.
Mm.
There's an and there. It's important.
See, the problem is that the choice is to spend that extra time in converting the raised dot to an X, so that it appeals.
You're not even supposed to put an X there. You just put the symbols next to each other.
What are you talking about?
Do you write 2XA if you want to say 2A, or do you say 2A?
No. That's not the issue. The issue is when we have a whole thing. And by the way, that's just the output of MathCAD. So what you could do is use not MathCAD.
Yeah,
except MathCAD's amazing. So he can go suck it. And that's literally what I wrote on my homework, was that a note types that I use MathCAD, and this is the default. See, the sad part is the older versions of MathCAD. The sad part
is you didn't say suck it.
I do like having an A and keeping my A.
Yeah, so, but I'm not as entertained now, so this is affecting me directly.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. I will tell you to suck it, and that should be just as good.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got it out there vicariously,
right,
at least.
That's exactly right. So I sent that off to with basically this explanation.
I'll need a vaccine and I'll inject it myself, I promise.
Well, that was a fun. I had that conversation with my boss. So we have this guidance on how we're doing it. And I said, so I have no intention of getting the vaccine, but you have no right to know that because that's a HIPAA violation. So when I leave the state and go on vacation, this is the date that I'm coming back. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Let's take a look at the policy. I'm like, nope, policy doesn't matter because you don't get to know whether I was vaccinated or not. So what I am telling you is this is when I'm coming back to work. It is a courtesy, not an actual you have
no right to this information.
Opinion. You have no right to this information. I am presenting this to you in a non-official.
So here's the funny thing: if they require everyone to get vaccinated,
which they
can, as a condition of being employed when hired,
I don't know if they can.
That is allowed.
Individual corporations.
If you're already employed, it's kind of fuzzy.
And for a government job, I believe, funny enough, because of Roe v. Wade, they can't force this on you.
Probably.
Well,
I mean, none of us are lawyers here, knock on wood and shit.
Speaking from the perspective of somebody who's working directly with the government, we actually gain more rights than most other employees do.
Yeah, so you're a federal employee.
I'm not directly a federal employee. I'm technically still under a private company, but
so the stipulation is if you get government money, you have to follow government rules.
That's exactly right. And so the Constitution restricts the government. It doesn't restrict private organizations, as the left is so keen to point out with Twitter and Facebook and the rest. Which means that we actually get more rights than the average person does while working at a government job. Because our rights are actually respected.
Ironic.
Well, they're obeyed. Respected is something that is to be desired.
Obeyed is all listen, I'm a compliance engineer. All I care for is obedience.
It's funny, you give me shit for being the safety asshole, and you're just the guy with the clipboard.
Well,
You say
To
that.
be fair, he's
You
also
say
got a
that,
hat.
There was that pause.
Oh, by the way, that has finally ended. It is.
Oh yeah.
So we are like 6 months into dealing with IH, and that
Yeah.
whole thing is finally over. And
Oh,
that was because
fucking finally.
finally, right? And that is
That's
because
nuts.
last week, not this past week, but the week before that, the dude who was causing all of the problems was on vacation. So we
Oh,
got
good.
work done.
Fuck 'em.
We got procedures out. He comes back Monday morning, bright and early, and he shuts down a job that had already been going because he hadn't had time to review the document. And all of a sudden, the next day, all of those standing orders and various other compliance things with IH went away in lieu of we promise to put out good documents, which means you will sign what I put in front of you, as I told you 6 months ago.
Oh god, get a picture of his face.
That's got to be classic.
I mean,
Just
how
for personal use later on when you're sitting there in bed, you're like, honey, look, it was fantastic what we just did, but I have to tell you about what I just did at work.
it wasn't. Luckily, it wasn't my job that was shut down, because the last time one of those people attempted to sit there and he broadcast about how they were trying so hard to get everything through, and I basically humiliated him publicly. Because and I've had people turn to me and they say, hey, you got to learn tact, and I'm like, why? I'd rather beat people with their own incompetence. It's much easier.
It's also much funnier.
It is
Much more
it is.
satisfying in general.
So this guy, he sat there and he sent out his response to my, hey, you haven't gotten these 6 documents through the process, and the longest one's out 8 weeks. And he sent out this thing about where the status of all these documents were, where they were commented on, and all this other stuff. And I said, well, no, you actually didn't get this, because I have email documentation of this was the final date that it was commented on. We're still waiting on you, blah, blah, blah. He tried to throw it back in engineering's chair. And I think I threw out the fact that, sorry about the fact that he was 3 days between the time that you sent out a response. He was actually out on bereavement. And oh yeah, by the way, this is still out 8 weeks. And so he sent it to every manager. So I just replied to every manager, and it was really funny. So I go downstairs to my department.
That
Right.
reversal is such a classic.
So I go downstairs to the first floor with my department, and I hear all of these people cackling. I'm like, "What's up?" He goes, and I just hear Steve, you just don't know how to have tact. I'm like, I think you fundamentally misunderstand. He was wrong. I don't need to have tact when he's wrong.
What I like is it's a bluff. If you're gonna email everybody in the chain, you better be ready for someone to hit reply all.
That's exactly right. Do not.
Because if you look like an asshole there, it's your ass.
Yeah,
Live
I
by
think
the
the final
sword,
response
die by
that
the
I got from him was, "Thank you very much for your kind words," or some sort of thing like that. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Look how that. I actually got a call from his manager over that whole entire thing. He said we should probably not talk about this over email anymore. I'm like, huh? I wonder why that happened.
Funny.
Look, people are trying to get shit done. Everyone's just laughing in the office.
That's.
Stop it. Productivity's down 15% because of you.
Man, I swear I couldn't think of a better segue than this for the next topic. I mean, like we said,
somebody's actually trying to keep us on point.
Oh yeah, no, I have to say that's my job here, guys. Come on now.
I came in not knowing what point we were on in the first place.
We were just talking stocks.
That's okay.
But this is good. Now we've got some quality stuff. So we were just talking about living by the sword and dying by the sword, and everybody's just falling out of their seats. So if you'll
sigh.
I know, right? It's so good.
Sigh.
So Lenovo has just released an anime-themed chair. There are apparently only going to be like 5 of them in Japan, and it comes with its own katana, but not fedora, unfortunately.
It's not a real katana. They make it very
No,
clear
it's not.
It's not a.
Yeah,
it
it's
just
not even
looks like
removable.
a
It just
katana.
looks like it. It's a gaudy, ostentatious chair that doesn't look tremendously comfortable with a plastic katana. And I'll be sure and link it below for everyone.
Let's be very clear. The first people to viable sex robots is probably going to be Japan, and that's because a significant portion of their males will buy this.
Yeah.
Yeah, if this was actually for sale, I imagine it would sell like gangbusters.
I'm sure it would. Like I can't even. So I have a gaming chair, and I love it because it looks like a racing chair. It's got vibrant color contrast and all this other stuff. And I'm a nerd, and I'm okay with that. And it lives in my palace of shame. Right? But I would never have a katana and anime-themed chair.
See, like, I actually have swords, but that's because I collect them.
I do too.
Which I don't like.
I mean,
But if I had,
I'll
I would
admit,
not get
I've got a
chair
katana within
because
arm's reach here, but it's not
I
attached
would-
to my chair.
I would not get a chair because of a katana.
Well, you know what's
Well,
really
you're lucky.
funny
You can
is-
only win this one.
So I've got a friend, and he turns around and he this is a good story. So he's he's getting into his late 20s.
Mhm.
Pretty sure there has been no significant other in that whole space. And you turn around and you talk to him, and you're like, all right, so what are you trying to do to meet women? He goes, oh, well, dating websites and Tinder profiles and all the rest of that stuff. I'm like, so have you had any success? He goes, no. I'm like, well, why is that? And he goes, well, I have high standards. I'm like, what are those high standards? And he goes, well, they have to be into anime. I'm like, well, you
Okay.
clearly don't love pussy as much as I do.
Look, it's okay for someone else to have different interests.
It is okay to have different interests, but
Like,
you
you have
also
to have
shouldn't
some
put anime
common
in your
things.
profile.
No,
You have to have
no,
some
not at all.
commonality, but like,
One does not put that they are a lover of anime in their
well,
dating
that's the
profile.
thing is that would still be able to work if you
I
if you didn't impose that on someone else.
Well, yeah, I mean, and if you're also going on like anime.
If that wasn't like the only thing in your profile, then I'm still thinking you could make that work.
Listen, the only chicks who are going to be into anime are going to be the ones who will tell you their pronouns.
Not necessarily, but there's
No.
a very high likelihood.
There
to-
Nowadays, I'd say that you're probably more right than not. But like, that was hilariously not the case not that long ago.
Yeah, no, not even just a couple years, 2, 3 even maybe.
And I blame that largely on the fact that people have not been using condoms appropriately.
Wow, they've replicated that fast in 2-3 years. Man.
No, it happened a while ago. It's just that they've all gotten onto Twitter.
Yeah, kind of. They've turned it into a
Bunch
hellish
of
cesspool.
very young people with no brains and no idea what the fuck to say,
Oh, you
saying
know what,
everything they possibly can.
I told my wife that if anybody wants to turn around and start forcing me to have pronouns, right? I'm going to say that I'm trans black and my pronouns are...
Oh my god.
I am gonna have to not let that go out because
Come on, man.
I mean,
Like, not even the Biden variety. Come on, man.
I like sitting there. It goes back to that compliance thing, right? It's malicious compliance.
No, there's better ways to do it than that. Dressing up like Rachel Dolezal.
Who is that?
Wow, you really don't know.
Nope.
well, she.
You see, so back in
Is
the
that
day.
the one who's like trans black?
Well,
Well,
hold on
no,
a second.
no, she was
back
black.
Back in the day, when I was Godfrey, we came up with the idea of #WrongSkin. Little did we know that a fucking year later, Rachel Dolezal would come into the into the news,
Oh yeah, you were telling me about this one.
and she was the chair. Was it the chair or whatever she was the
Yeah,
head
chair
of
of the
like her
NCAA.
local of
Or
her local
NAACP, sorry.
her local NAACP. She's the head of it in like one of the whitest areas of the country. And she has a picture of her holding that fucking book, How to Be Black, but it's upside down in the picture.
And she looks
And
like...
she's just got a spray tan.
Yeah,
She's got the same tan Trump does.
And a perm.
She had the same tan Trump does, maybe half a shade darker.
Yeah, and then a curl perm. Not even...
And her parents are like... Her parents are baked cookie white.
Yeah, they are...
Baked cookie.
Yeah, they're Kansas white.
Really?
Like the highest temperature light you can think of as a whiteness for paper.
That's blue, isn't it?
Well, they're
Maybe.
not sick,
Oh no. all of my. I just noticed that all of my z-axis is too low. I have to go friggin' adjust my. Redo my board. I'm sorry. I'm just so mad that I watched it just etch all of my surface goo off of the top of the friggin' thing.
Well, it could have been worse.
That's a great feeling, isn't it?
You know, didn't
It is.
actually dig into
It is.
you.
You're like what the hell is going on here?
Why is there the like? It's a fantastic outline in the bottom of the piece, but I don't want to see that.
Right? Like why? What possibly drives this thing? What? That's what I don't understand.
Well,
is
the
why
motors
is it-
do.
Yeah, stepper motors are good about that sort of thing.
I just don't understand why the bed height would change that much. I tried to put on my my auto leveling sensor, and so it probably would work if I was using just the metal bed, but because I got the glass bed on there, it doesn't work anymore. So I turned it on.
That'd be a problem.
Yep, I turned it on. It goes straight to the middle and just crashes straight down into the bed. It just keeps on going. I'm like, oh my god, what?
So I hate to tell you, but stuff expands when it gets heated. And if you do multiple prints in a row with a heated bed, it's possible that you have to redo the bed level every single time, as you're supposed to.
I really hope I don't have to deal with that on mine. Speaking of, status update completely built. I've given up on the camera because I don't have a long enough cable. And I also don't have a long enough cable, so it's waiting on a firmware flash right now. I've got like 4 foot of USB and I need like 8. So I'm either going to have to figure out a table or something.
I understand that materials expand. I also do not understand why knit beds would be so shitty.
Your clearance is not that big.
Yeah, I know. It's what, 0.2 millimeters or whatever?
I mean, less is probably preferable, but yeah, around there. So, remember the idea of having a sheet of paper underneath the nozzle, just barely catching, but being able to be dragged out? That's whatever that thickness is.
Yeah, that's, as a matter of fact, that's in my instructions to build for the final zeroing, so I would think that's pretty standard. Matter of fact, that's actually pretty standard in machining, too.
Yeah, an RCH. For the lay people, that'd be a red cunt here.
Oh, there you go.
Poor
See, why don't you use something more creative, like red cunt hair for your pronouns?
I would much rather
be equally offensive
have
to these people, but you'd be able to say it on YouTube.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to cut out sections of the damn podcast or put a bleep over them.
Because
I'm leaning towards bleep because those are funny.
Or make your pronouns pink pussy hat.
I am a big fan. I'm a big fan of forcing cognitive dissonance, and
this would still do it, and we'd still be able to make the big dollars off of YouTube.
I think at the end of the day.
No, you see that would not be cognitive. That would short circuit their anger response.
Well, that's the goal, right? Like you want to turn around. You want to turn around and you want to have something that is
there would be no redeeming that. In their eyes, there's no way to come back from that for them. But if you come in and you say like red cunt hair, you'd be like, oh yeah, but that's a standard unit of measurement. I don't know what the fuck. Then you get them railing about measurement systems.
Do they rail about measurement systems?
I mean, I
no
saw
doubt
someone
that they are
talking about how units were oppressive.
Yeah, there you go.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, no, dieting is actually white supremacy.
Units are oppressive because the act of measuring something confines it. I don't understand how these people like put their own pants on. I mean, I guess that actually would have been the best part of quarantine for them, or lockdowns in general, is you don't have to actually dress yourself in the morning, so, you know, whoever it is that actually helps them out with that kind of stuff.
Where are we here?
Day off.
Here we are. Food Psych number 184. Why diet culture is a form of oppression. Classy. Absolutely
I think the sad part is, right, so I go into diet mode every summer, right?
Sure.
I do diet and exercise probably until about July, because then it turns into, 1 billion degrees and I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, that's
right?
fair.
So I
Wrong
am
answer,
a
but
fair
fair.
weather dieter, but that is enough to usually knock off 20 to 30 pounds over that period of time. And
Oh, crazy.
I-
Diet and exercise. You wouldn't think that would be the secret.
it is amazing how well it works. And then, it slowly kind of goes up from there because I don't want to go out for a run when it's 1,000,000,000 degrees, and I don't want to go out for a bike ride. Actually, I wouldn't have minded going for a bike ride last year, but my bike was in the shop, so I couldn't really do that. But you cut it out for a period of time, then like mid-August, the temperatures cool off a little bit, and so you start going again. But like I will say, as much as I accept the fact that I am eating and drinking too much, wholesale, right? It is making me fat. I will also accept that fatness is not a pleasant state of being. Like everything is better when you slim down just a little bit.
No, yeah, no,
Like
absolutely.
just a little bit. Yeah, I have like I get heartburn. I get heartburn. I get wheezing and all this other stuff that if I
Sounds
go
like you
through
got an
that.
extra set of genitalia too. Almost from
Well,
Aphrodite.
I start with just double the whammy that most people have.
Well, I can say, having been 100 pounds more of me at one point, there's an enormous difference in what I'm capable of on any given day than what I was once capable of. But that said, I think
100 extra pounds of Evan?
at one time, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is actually kind of impressive.
I was pretty big. Well, I was big as a certain late night shock talk show host on the internet.
You mean the midget?
I don't know anything about the heights of any individuals that may or may not be in question at this time.
That's not a sensitive word. I'm sorry. The Hobbit. He's fat too.
Who can say? Who can say? All I know is based on those released measurements is that I was roughly equivalent, if perhaps a bit taller. So that being what it is, you.
So 4 feet.
No, I was taller. So that being what it is, I can say that being heavy, it just sucks. It just really sucks, especially.
It really does.
It
really does. And in all seriousness, like everything gets better. Your ability to actually work out gets easier the more you. The more you are not, exceedingly fat. Sex is better. Everything's better.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that whole more cushion for the pushing, but that's
no.
That's just bad
that only
science.
works if you don't like your partner and you want them to do everything.
I believe that the appropriate engineering term is power to weight ratio.
Absolutely. You want a car, you want more power for it. So the best way to make a car go faster, make it way less. You don't have to do anything else.
Needs to be high enough,
Yes. So I'm all for it. Like, I love it. I love the idea, but nope.
So absolutely, unless you're adding in a horse, you should basically, not do that because horsepower makes it better.
That you use out in your driveway, like the kind that there's bad videos about.
Not horses, by the way. Don't look for bad horse videos.
I was like, wait, what? What is?
I was going towards the Mr. Hands thing, but we can skip that part.
Yeah. Don't look for Mr. Hands, or do look for Mr.
Thing
Hands.
In Florida.
What was that?
I don't think Mr. Hands happened in Florida. I want to say it was Middle America.
It could easily be a Florida man, but
it absolutely could. Absolutely could. More of the kind of person that I think would, get real upset about things that are going on in their lives and go to like Pulse nightclub to make a statement about how they're real upset about how they've been hanging out at Pulse nightclub too much lately. But no, that was probably right on the line of a little bit too esoteric. But I don't think the algorithm is going to catch it, so we should be safe.
Well, I mean, you've gotten all the way up to the point where you say Allahu Akbar.
Well, yeah, you can.
What is wrong with saying that God is great?
I don't know.
That's an interesting
point. People get upset about phonies.
I believe. You know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing that Craig is triggered.
No, people seem to get upset by foreign E's. It's weird.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to go to the Aloha snack bar, right? That's
Yeah. No,
That's
true
correct.
story. That's actually a business plan of someone I know is
a
to
line of
open up.
Aloha snack bars.
That's going to be one of the products he wants to sell.
An actual
Along with
snack
a lot
bar.
of, yeah, an actual thing, along with other things that are named so appropriately.
Oh, nice. Well,
That's
might be a good place to
venture
market a
he
pussy
might
hat.
come to at some point. And if that ever does happen, I'm absolutely going to get one. But until then,
I would absolutely do a paid advertisement for the Aloha snack bar. I might even do an unpaid advertisement, but it's going to require at least a few Aloha snack bars.
I would be absolutely eating them and enjoying them in the most vocal way possible.
Oh, delicious! I'm sure they are. Well,
Well,
they'll probably have some pork
let's
to
just
them.
say
So.
that you have to eat the entire thing and they end with a bang.
Absolutely. Well, as I say, best things go out with a bang. So
It sounds like something involving pineapples and Pop Rocks.
that's brilliant. You need to convey that, Craig. You absolutely do, because that's genius. Maybe even a little bit of pizza flavor in there just to make it as absolutely.
Mmm.
Let's
Yes.
hit all the memes at once, shall we?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. You can even put Sonic on the cover.
Pineapple pizza and Pop Rocks. Yes.
Well, you see, I don't know. It'd have to be some kind of had to have like a Podesta themed product, I think. Though that might never
Well,
get
you just
past
have
the
kids
censor.
marketing.
Even if you like, make a place, even if you make a place in Japan, I don't know if you'd be able to get past the.
I know, no, you just have the kids do the
being able to sell it
advertising. You don't
factory.
actually have them do the selling at the stores. Just do the ads with the kids. That'll be fine.
It's like, Epstein Island.
Okay. I'm gonna drop a little piece of knowledge that I just recently found out about Epstein.
Uh-oh.
Now,
Did you find out that he
Was
didn't
he-
kill himself?
was he not?
I did not actually. As I said, this is recent, and everybody already knows that Epstein didn't kill himself. So,
Ah.
I mean, I hope they all know because he didn't. But anyway,
My favorite. I was coming home from, I can't remember where. I think Harbor Freight. I just bought a nice thing at Chinesium, and I got behind this car, and they had that as not a bumper sticker, but it went across their entire back windshield. I was like so proud of them.
Oh, nice. That is how you do it.
Right?
Anyway.
Like it's one thing to have a little bumper sticker. It's a whole other thing to have it be
That's
your entire
dedication.
back window.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is.
So what was the recent news?
So, as we all know, the cruise industry has been pretty badly hit by things. I don't know
Sure.
if the Disney cruises are ever going to restart, but the Disney.
Oh, they have money enough to throw at it.
No, yeah, they'll probably.
I don't
just
know.
wait.
They took a pretty big loss on Star
They
Wars.
did.
They did.
They did.
They did.
But that's
And-
a separate business unit. They could probably write that off in taxes.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, and I mean, Gavin Newsom's going to let him, so there's that.
Yep.
Well, at least for the next little bit until he's gone. Which, by the way, that's not much is happening there, but
Which
he's
one's
basically
Gavin
gone.
Newsom?
He's the California governor. Yeah, he is
He
got recalled.
despised. Yeah, he's been recalled.
Did he actually get recalled?
Yeah,
Well,
the vote's going to happen,
It
basically.
has to be a ballot measure. The thing passed the signature requirement, so it has to be a ballot measure.
Yeah, despite all his
bad.
protestations, for that matter, as well. And he
Yeah,
fought...
because you can't just trust these signatures. You need ID.
Yeah, you need signature verification for
It's amazing how
this.
that works.
It is, isn't it? Oh, but anyway, I was going to tell you guys about what's happening with the Disney Cruise Lines. You see, they used to do a snorkeling stop at a little island in the area of the Virgin Islands. You'll never guess which one. Little St. James. So a bunch of Disney crew and children went and stopped at Little St. James on the regular.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got no segue. I've got nothing else to that. Just, what the fuck?
Well,
Disney.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
Yeah. There you go. And that's pretty much the long
That's
and
a new
short of that
form
whole
of
story.
punctuation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that does really, really kind of beats out the Oxford comma, doesn't it?
Just a fucking exclamation mark after every letter.
Oh, yeah. It's
I'm
better than the
sorry. I'm
clack.
an English major, or sorry, I'm an engineer, not an English major. I don't know what an Oxford comma is.
That's because you're a terrible engineer.
No, I'm a great engineer. That's why
No,
I'm great.
Oxford comma is required because then you have clear instructions.
I believe that we covered this very briefly, but I believe that the maximum amount of words that need to go into a series of instructions is the absolute bare minimum, and
Yeah, and
excess punctuation
a
marks.
list of 3 items, then you need 2 commas. These people leaving out the last comma are fucking heathen.
Well, yeah, but then wouldn't? But if you don't do it that way, wouldn't you just need the bullet points instead? So, I mean, are you really saving any space or time?
It depends on the bullets we're using.
I'm a big fan of bullet points. I really am.
Yeah, bullet points
are we talking about muzzle loaded or are we talking about cartridges?
I think we're talking about indents, but you know, that might be another.
That's just the complete wrong kind of bullet.
Depends on what you're after. Depends on what you're after.
I'm after compliance with proper grammar.
Well.
At
gunpoint if need be.
Well, then you are going to need a different kind of bullet point, then, I suppose.
All right, pup, go to bed.
Oh, has the laboratory assistant come to add some assistance to us?
Yeah, I wish it was a laboratory assistant. It's a Husky assistant.
Oh, I see. You don't have
Husky is a fantastic brand of tools.
It is a tool, that's for sure. A dog.
Oh, so speaking of tools, I don't
He's
know if you guys have
heard. It's just not a particularly useful tool.
Again, speaking of not particularly useful tools. So, Maxine Waters recently crossed state lines to incite violence against police and National Guard, which resulted in the shooting of some National Guard in Minnesota.
So I had a talk with someone. Well, I had a very brief conversation with someone on Twitter. Someone I already know off Twitter too. So I guess. Well, you guys have seen him in Discord as Batman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he and I were talking earlier today about this, and the thing is, what you don't do is sink down to the standard that you are upset about.
It's a speculum.
So there are already legal tools that can be used to affect change in this kind of thing, like censoring, not censoring, but censuring a member of Congress.
Oh, like you'd remove them from their
all the committee appointments, all of them. Just remove all of the institutional power they wield, save the ability to vote if they're going to behave like that. And then they won't do it again. Or they'll do it and they'll be extra loud and annoying, but they won't be able to do jack shit inside Congress. They won't be able to bring any bills forward, won't be able to do anything but vote on roll call. So, that's the way to do it. These talks about doing, like, impeaching her for the same shit that they're going after Trump for, yada yada yada, or trying to hold her liable in court. The courts. So if you're a member of Congress, you have very wide latitude for speech.
Yep. And you should.
Should. Exactly. That's the point at the end of this. More so than even the common citizen when it comes to a court of law. In fact, there's a precedent of no court precedent, or a limited court precedent at most, for speech by members of Congress. If you're talking about incitement, fighting words, all that kind of stuff, even then, hardly prosecuted because they're members of Congress. They're supposed to be able to say obnoxious shit.
I mean, at the end of the day, first off, I am a free speech absolutist. So I firmly believe that I think the First Amendment pretty much gives you the right to do whatever the hell you want that doesn't involve harming another human being.
Oh, actually, let me hop in here real quick and say something.
Like physical harm.
Well, let me say something really specific on that exact point. You can yell fire in a crowded theater.
Yes.
This has literally been tested. You can. It is only if injury results from your actions or some crime results from your actions that you are to be held liable. Just to clarify that whole trope.
It's got to be imminent. If you have to intend for, say you yell fire in a crowded theater and then someone gets trampled, you have to intend for that to happen. There's a mens rea requirement. You can't. It's not just, oh, they shouted fire, therefore bad, and then you go to jail. Like, what if there's actually a fucking fire? That's also been tested. So, that and the very guy who suggested in the dissenting opinion that is a problem, because that fucking got overturned, said later on in the court decision that overturned that decision that he was wrong. The same guy who said it was right the first time said he was wrong the second time.
Well, I mean,
so every single time someone quotes that, they're quoting the guy before he said himself that was wrong.
I want to be very clear here. I very firmly believe in free speech absolutism, right? Like, this is the First Amendment is literally your right to do pretty much anything that you want at any time, as long as you don't directly harm somebody else. And that means that you have to physically actually do something. When we start talking about these external things, and by the way, I actually extend that even to the Second Amendment. The right to bear arms includes all the way up to nuclear weapons.
And I was just talking to my cousin who was complaining to me about this shit. He's like, why is a gun license too restrictive but voter ID isn't? It's like, well, first off, a gun license is like a speaking license. You don't require that under the 1A, and you damn well shouldn't under the 2A.
Absolutely not.
But I mean, these things twisted backwards. The only reason that the 1A comes first is because it is that much more important than the 2A, which secures the 1A. That's the reason why that one directly comes second.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, right, the way I always deal with the people who are like, well, you should have restrictions on your Second Amendment right. The answer is, if you want to own a tank, you should absolutely be able to own a tank.
Well,
but that doesn't mean that anybody has to sell you one.
Here's my stipulation on that. There should be restriction. The same if there's going to be any restrictions on what you can own in the Second Amendment. If you want to require restrictions on that, then there should be restrictions on your ability to say that there should be restrictions on the Second Amendment. You should not be allowed to talk about restrictions on the Second Amendment if you believe that there should be restrictions on the Second Amendment.
True.
What?
I mean, if you're going to fall down a rabbit hole of bullshit, you've got to take all the bullshit with you.
That gets the point across, because it does the exact same thing with an amendment that's equally important.
I mean,
if they can't accept that those restrictions should be allowed, then their point is moot.
I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to something like free speech, the reason that we have that as a freedom is specifically for political dissidents, right? The reason that we have free speech as a right
is so you can be a cunt, and then the government can't do shit about it.
Right, and more importantly, like, the reason that our country has thrived is things like the concept of free speech. It is the ability to hold power to account, which is not something they have in other nations. And by the way, that's what the left is really going after, is this.
You'll notice that's going great for Canada right now, where they're actually going to be able to be stopped in, I can't remember the province, but it doesn't fucking matter, it's Canada. They're going to be able to be stopped for being outside during lockdown. And the police are going to be able to inquire why they're outside and then send them home.
Happens in papier?
Well, and that's kind of the thing, is that we take the First Amendment for granted, and they're all like, hey, we want to be able to have a Black Lives Matter protest, which is great. But the reason that you're able to have a Black Lives Matter protest is not because Black Lives Matter is a great thing, right? It's because you have a First Amendment right.
Well, funny enough, it's actually a lot of it to do with the KKK. The reason you can have a lot of these things and say a lot of these things is because of the Ku Klux Klan. Thanks, KKK. Really appreciate what you've done for us. Thanks, guys.
Is that actually true?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What you want? They basically, if you wanted to call something hate speech, there you go.
Yeah, no, they've actually pressed things And when the ACLU was actually worth a shit, they defended the KKK on a number of occasions. I mean,
The reason why is because this is the reason why I was saying that prosecuting Maxine Waters or impeaching her for whatever bullshit is a bad idea. Just come full circle on this. It's because it sets precedents that don't already exist, and a reversal of other precedent. And it's a bad thing because then what happens if it is?
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
What happens if it's the person that should be saying things that are atrocious or whatever later on?
I'm going to play devil's advocate on this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't think that you should be dealing with inciting riots and all the other stuff that you see from MTG's tweet. Right? That is, she's wrong. Like, you should not be, but you should absolutely be able to expel people from Congress for it, not because they're doing something that you don't like, but because they aren't in keeping with the manner and presentation of politicians.
Well,
and I would actually be all for that. I would be all for that in a lot of cases, and I think there's a lot of other politicians who deserve a similar treatment.
I think being expelled is too much because we have people literally. We've had literal gun duels on the floor of the chamber. All right.
I support bringing back dueling. Let me be very clear.
I think they should do that and wear their sponsors' advertisements.
Yes, they absolutely. Like, I believe that we should bring back dueling. Because I can guarantee
companies
you,
are going to pay for these politicians, then they should.
I guarantee you, this woke bullshit. If it came down to, like, I would happily challenge a woke person in a duel, because you know what? They won't stand up for this woke bullshit if they get called out. Having the threat of imminent death is something that our politicians should have. I am a big fan of Jefferson. That tree is mighty thirsty, and at the end of the day, we have protected our politicians, and we shouldn't. They should be afraid of the citizenry, and they should act as leaders, not as politicians, in the worst of the senses that we have. But I can see turning around to people who are acting in bad faith and saying, "Hey, we should expel you for this." And
well,
what was it? There's
expulsion is still too much in my opinion. Just bring them off of their committees is enough.
I disagree. What is it?
Primary her. She's only gonna. She's a rep, right? She's got 2 years at a time.
Who's the rep from New York? What's the guy? He came out all the time saying that he had absolute evidence of Trump colluding with Russia. What was that guy's name?
Oh, the one with the ass face, yeah.
Yes, ass face. I know. That's all I have.
The one with the famous, yes. God damn it! Now you tip of the tongue me.
I can't remember what the guy's name is, but like somebody like him is somebody else that I think should get expelled, right?
Again, I think being censured. So here's the other thing: is pointing out hypocrisy does wonders.
It's not hypocrisy. If you come out
instead of saying, "Hey, you need to apologize," blah blah blah, just be like, "All right, look, you said this at such and such date and time, and you were wrong then. Here's you saying it again. Here's you being wrong." Just hammer the point that they're wrong, actually and morally,
right?
And just hammer that shit no matter what they say over and over again.
I'm okay with the idea of sitting there and saying, "Hey, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong," but I absolutely do believe that we need to put in, and this is the closest I come to infringing on the First Amendment, and I am very serious here. Like this is a big thing for me, but I absolutely believe that people who lie in a public setting, or as public officials or as public news organizations, need to face severe penalties for actively and intentionally lying. So, for instance, the most recent case with CNN, CNN has openly admitted within its own private forums that it is a biased news network. It is actively campaigning for the activists, and that it was basically making shit up.
And may I say, bless those dear souls and James O'Keefe over at Project Veritas, who have unfortunately been yeeted from Twitter because Twitter can't handle the truth.
Oh, I love that video.
At the end of the day,
he shows up at the end of the video is brilliant.
At the end of the day, they should face severe consequences. Now, I believe that they have the right to say whatever they want, but they don't have the right to sit there and actively lie. Right? We don't allow medical companies to make shit up and sell snake oil. That's something that we have acknowledged.
There's two separate things. We do allow them to make shit up. We don't allow them to use made-up shit to sell snake oil.
Well, you're selling ad space based on made up shit. So, and when we start talking about something like Maxine Waters is supposed to be an elected representative. I am very okay with ousting an elected representative. I'm not okay with throwing her in jail, right? Like, I don't think there should be criminal penalties. She should be allowed to say whatever she wants. But if she doesn't act in accordance with what we would expect of actual leadership, I absolutely believe that she should be able to be recalled.
There were literal duels on the floor, gun duels.
Sure, and gun duels are great.
People have been stabbed on the floor. People have been beaten with a cane on the floor. These are obviously more severe actions than standing there and being a bitch on the street.
I think that is I have less of an issue with the expression of like two people fighting out over things that they firmly disagree on than people coming forward and outright lying to the populace. I really do believe that information is the most potent weapon that people have, and actively lying sits there. It interferes with our cognitive function and our reasoning. We don't have all the time in the world to dig into every single detail about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have a representative actually lying, they should face penalties. Now, if you want to bring back dueling, I'm okay with bringing back dueling. In fact, I would be okay if we made that like a legitimate part of our government where we say, hey, any individual can challenge any other individual to a duel over what they say. And I bet you that all of this rhetoric would come down way in temperament very quickly.
But I bet you there would be something that would be far more entertaining before that happened, though, and that would be someone showing up thinking that they could actually duel, never having held a fucking gun in their life.
Sure, and that would be fantastic. But I would absolutely, like, if we wanted to ensconce the fact that you have consequences for what you say, and it doesn't mean that you get expelled from Congress, that's fine. But there should be consequences for outright lying. There should be consequences for inflaming people, right? And making inflammatory and defamatory statements that aren't true. That there should be consequences for that.
I don't know about inflammatory, but absolutely defamatory or libel.
So here's the thing: is there is a strict non-liability for speech on the chamber floor. Period.
Right. But this isn't on the chamber floor.
That is an absolute thing. And then, as I was saying, there is a precedent of no precedent, or a minimal precedent, for the jurisprudence for outside of the chamber.
If you are acting in a professional or business capacity dealing with your representatives, then that's one thing, right? Like, I understand that a president will have to speak around the country. But Maxine Waters does not live in Minnesota. She does not represent anyone in Minnesota. She should not be going to Minnesota. There are plenty of other people from Minnesota who should be speaking.
That same latitude is generally extended in the same way for members of Congress that are, quote, on their way to the chamber.
Yeah,
the same way they can't be stopped.
As much as it's a stupid move... In fact,
the one that got arrested in Georgia, when they were signing the bill, had she simply said, I'm on the way to the chamber, they would have had to let her go.
Which one are you talking about?
The one that was banging on the door and then got arrested because she was told to stop it multiple times and she didn't fucking listen.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, that happened actually, I think just a few weeks ago. She was basically raising a ruckus about the new voter reform law, if I'm not mistaken.
She said, I just want to be present when it gets signed. It's like, no, we know what you're going to do. You're going to walk in, you're going to make it all about you, and you're going to get yourself a scene the same way you wanted to when you got yourself arrested outside. So she got exactly what she was there for. She got arrested.
So, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you, but I think that any kind of consequence these people face should really be social, which is where I really fall in with you on the second point. You know, we really do need to bring back dueling.
Well,
fuck it, give them Nerf guns. Give them Nerf guns.
I don't care what the consequence is. I don't care what the consequence is, but it should legitimately be a threat to your position. Like, it can't be a whole bunch of people heckling you. I don't think that's very effective. But I think either losing your position, losing your status...
taking away their chair would be pretty funny. Making them stand.
That would be entertaining.
That would be entertaining. I mean,
They're gonna treat like a
the
child,
bottom
treat them like a
line,
child.
the bottom line is that,
Go stand in the
there
corner,
needs to be
Alexandria.
consequences for our leadership going out and spewing bullshit. I have no, like, I'm not opposed to you having free speech. I don't think that you should be thrown in jail for what you say. But if you are acting in the capacity as a leader of the United States and you choose to do things that are contrary to what we would consider viable leadership, right? And it is not in accordance with your actual duties, then I am very okay with consequences. Severe consequences that can remove you from the position. Be that through a duel or be that through literally removing you from your position. Either way, like if you're using the status of your position to convey a non-leadership thing, we should be able to take that away from you.
I mean,
I don't care.
Imagine if you took away their chair and replaced their plaque with their name and wingdings. I mean, I think that would
Be
kind of get the
entertaining.
point across.
Oh, speaking
Just
of
like
free speech,
everything in their office. Just
I mean,
take away everything in their office. Don't remove the door.
I'm okay with going with a dunce cap. I think that's a great idea.
I mean, it worked for however long, right?
Right.
That's what we did for kids in school. It worked.
Yeah,
maybe we need to spank these people.
Make sure that their
Maybe
sandwiches
that
are cold and.
Yeah, cold sandwiches. Maybe a spanking here and there.
No, you can't do anything. No.
Oh wait, we can't do that because there's going to be too many of them that are going to be into it. So.
Well, and I want to be very clear, right? When we start talking about dueling, that is not a threat of immediate and imminent death. In fact, one of the key things about dueling was they were unrifled pistols, and the specific point of them being unrifled pistols was that there was a chance that you would die. So you would have to legitimately.
It was slim.
It was really slim. Those things went literally anywhere but right in front of you, and that's why you
it was
basically
a miracle
have.
if you hit the other person in your first shot.
Right. So like it was. When we start talking about dueling, this is not an immediate threat of death, but it actually puts their lives on the line, and they have to be willing to stand up for what they say.
Keep in mind, it's a 6 or 8 inch barrel at 20 paces, and you can't fucking hit the side of a barn at that point.
Yes.
Maybe a big
barn. You can hit the side of a big, but like you get the point. You're not likely to hit the other person.
You could definitely hit an Amazon warehouse.
Yeah, or a Tesla battery center, sure.
I'm kind of upset. My phone charge port really thinks that there's moisture in there, and I'm pretty convinced at this point that I accidentally spilled lube in it.
Oh,
and now I can't charge my phone properly.
You fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah, don't
the stuff's slippery.
Listen.
The stuff is slippery.
Shut up, you're the fucking fairy from Zelda.
That's right, damn it.
Oh, on the note of free speech, I have some really good news.
Uh-oh.
I'm only being very mildly ironic here, actually. We'll see how it plays out. But Mike Lindell, the Pillow Man himself, his new site goes live tomorrow, actually, 8 a.m. Central Time, frankspeech.com.
What exactly is his new site?
He's starting a social media website.
See, it's called frankspeech.com. What do you think it is?
I don't know.
From what I understand, you're not allowed to curse.
On fucking loop, all right?
It'll be something. And I'll probably make a profile there just because I don't want anybody to get my name.
Wow. So he's trying to create a new social media platform.
Trump is ostensibly gonna. I really hope he uses the name Trumper. Trump is ostensibly gonna make his own site.
There has been talk of a Trump social media.
I really hope he just make it basically Twitter, but everything is labeled as Trump.
Well, keep the T and everything.
Trump, Trumps, etc.
Here's the fundamental great thing about capitalism. The great thing about capitalism is these major problems that you face are solved very, very quickly. So when we start talking about conservative suppression on big tech, that's actually going to be solved because eventually conservatives are going to create their own platform. And the upside
and not get deplatformed or get taken off of.
Right.
Yeah, unless you go on to some place like Parler and talk about representatives drinking milk from a woman.
I mean, well, that's going to be the issue. Is they're going to have to try to fight it out to be like an actual free speech platform.
Yeah, that's not
Like
going to happen.
it is a challenge on.
Same way you can't go on to Gab, the free speech beacon of the internet, and use pornography because apparently that is also forbidden.
Right. These problems will get solved. The only problem that you have is that so there's going to be this really long period. They're going to basically have to create a social media site that somehow satisfies all of these markets that Twitter, Facebook, and the rest have carved out
So
without
make sure
having
and
the
follow us
primacy
all on
data.
Minds.
Yeah. And then this will the thing that will work is that because Twitter is banning these people, eventually, if enough of them move to an alternate social media, what will end up happening is on that alternate social media that will grow. Those people will be there, and then the other people will follow solely because that's where the other people that they hate live. So that's the thing that we face. But the problem that you have is you have to overcome that gigantic initial, what is it?
Yeah.
The initial reaction energy, if you will, to get going.
Well, I mean, if we're being
Yeah, the
entirely
sunk
honest,
cost in
Parler
capital
was
that's
pulling
not
that off.
measured
Right.
in dollars.
Right.
Parler was absolutely pulling that off for a time, and then they got the rug pulled out under them.
Well,
So,
yes,
as a point of
yes,
note, if
but
you're trying to do any of this, do not tie yourself into major infrastructure platforms because they will
Or
fuck you.
political bent.
this is the issue that you have is that we've gotten you want to start talking. We can talk here, we can sit here on the show, and we could probably all sit there and rant about how much we hate the fact that China's taken over most of our manufacturing, right? We can talk about that, but it doesn't change the fact that this is what you see all over the place, is that you have a whole bunch of people that will choose these tech platforms that are very, very successful in operations solely because they lower the effort curve because you don't have to build out your own infrastructure. As soon as you have to build out your own infrastructure, your costs go up, your maintenance goes up, the overall operational costs go up, and big tech companies, they've kind of sat there and made it so all of that stuff is embedded in their platform, so they're kind of taking over those costs for you. But the downside is that you have to play by their rules, which right now aren't fair.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Well, they're the rules that you agree to when you sign the contract.
They are. That is correct. That's why you don't see me on a lot of social media anymore.
Ye old terms of service.
Well,
So
if you
that
don't
being
read
said,
it and then you sign it anyway, then you're an idiot.
Well, I mean, what's the?
Especially if you complain later about how unfair they are.
To be fair, when you start talking about people like myself who signed up for Twitter, like or Facebook or stuff like that, a lot of these terms of service stuff where they're able to discriminate like they are now, are not things that were available when we originally signed up.
Well, you see, when they say in the terms of service that they can not only amend them but without notice to you.
Yes, I got
that's
that.
an enormous red flag.
Yeah, that is a thing that says we're gonna do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah, when you see that, you can basically just assume they've got a game plan, and they're just wearing their mask for now.
But and let's be very clear here. A lot of these companies, so for instance, YouTube didn't start off doing this shit. YouTube got sold and bought by Google, and even then, Google wasn't doing this shit. There was this whole period of time where they were "Don't be evil," and now they're.
I was gonna say at the time they had a motto that mattered.
Yes. And when I subcontracted for them, because I don't want to say I worked for them because that's not technically accurate, but when I subcontracted for them, that was front and center, was the fact that they like their message, their motto was "Don't be evil." And it was a big deal to them. Like, it was a big deal. They were very, very clear about what they considered to be evil. Like, Google was a good company at one time.
Well, and it's the same way that Twitter used to be the, quote, free speech wing of the free speech party.
Yes.
Ah, the good old days.
And then that turned out to be a lie.
Well, I think the issue that you have is that they were the free speech wing of the free speech party when liberals felt that they were under assault by conservatives, which was all in all, not that long ago. It was not that long ago that Family Guy would get. Sure.
That's when that happened.
It was not that long ago that Family Guy would get assaulted by Family Matters, or South Park would have various banning campaigns because they pissed off the right. Like, it really wasn't that long ago And one of the cool things about the internet is that our culture and our society is evolving quickly. The downside is that now
Evolving
it's
or devolving?
that's a good
Changing.
question. Changing.
Changing. Yes. Changing.
Well, actually, I would say evolving is always a state of change, right? Evolving is not necessarily positive and not necessarily negative.
Oh, now who's the fucking English major?
I'm not an English major. I just happen to have good diction. There's a difference.
Yeah,
That's
but
what she
terrible
said.
grammar.
You don't need grammar to convey your thought. You just need grammar to make it look pretty. And anybody who gives a shit about what my thoughts look like can smell my farts.
Yeah, well, fair enough, I suppose.
And these have been all his pronouns.
I can go back into what I think my pronouns should be if you guys don't.
Nah, I don't need to cut any more sections.
Well, let's
We're
see.
good.
Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits, right?
And all of that is actually okay. There's like 2 words that I know will get me fucked over, so I can't let those happen. Only
So,
2 in the whole of the
apparently-
fucking English goddamn language. Whatever.
So apparently my pronouns are just not allowed by Twitter, which is just bigotry because they don't accept us poor.
I think at some point I set my my pronouns on, or I set my gender on Google to Apache helicopter.
Did you really? How'd that go?
I mean, it was exactly as boring as it sounds.
I would say though that is based in Hellfire Build. So. Yeah,
Hellfire build?
absolutely.
Missiles.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah, not of the heat-seeking moisture missile variety. More of a classic and traditional one. As you say, you're a man of diction. Not a Apache helicopter, so you probably wouldn't know about these sort of things.
Yeah, probably not.
So,
You see, think of diction as your way of penetrating someone's mind, and grammar as the condom that prevents you from getting stuck inside for 18 to 25 years.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with spreading my diction as far as it can go.
But paying for it.
I don't think I'll pay for it.
Uh-huh.
Although oddly
That's
enough,
making your pronouns make more sense.
that's exactly right. No, you see,
It's fucked up.
my pronouns indicate that you should be paying me.
okay, Farrakhan.
Oh boy, there's no getting around this shit now, is there?
What if we dance?
It is
Just so.
certainly... Yeah, that is some Caribbean tap dancing you're doing here.
Well, better than the New
Now-
Orleans Navy, right?
And speaking of fantastic grammar related things, as I convey to these people, we'll go into something that just popped up. I got contacted on Twitter this week by an individual who is notifying me that one of my
Oh, that
things
was
may
great.
be used in a lawsuit.
Oh yeah, this is really good. Please share the story, please.
Dude, that is so fucking funny.
I was laughing so hard. So I got this huge Twitter thing.
Used
Somebody
in a
sent,
lawsuit?
send me a DM saying that there's this dude who tried to file a lawsuit, and so basically they've archived a whole bunch of his conversations, and they're reaching out to me to let me know that one of mine is one of the conversations I had with this dude is one of those things that's being archived as part of the defense.
That will
Because
be linked
this-
below. Please feel free to peruse and enjoy.
This
Oh my god, that's funny.
This conversation was like this case of Osama bin Laden. This is back when they were sitting there and still trying to claim that the Mueller probe would do something, right? And they thought the Mueller probe was going to do something. This guy linked something about how, this sad individual staring in front of the screen the last few days of Osama bin Laden. And I simply replied, who does this remind you of? Was what he stated. I said Hillary Clinton. The guy lost his shit. Started calling me a cum sock and a variety of other epithets. It was pretty delicious. And apparently, started commenting on my dick size, which is very alarming because I didn't realize.
It's awfully
that
topical, isn't it?
It is. I was very surprised how many people are concerned with my dick size.
Well, it wasn't just that he was concerned; he was He was fixated on the fact that he knew.
He knew my dick size. Yep.
He was certain.
It was.
And he kept calling you child.
It was.
Which
it
was
was
equally
epic.
problematic,
That's
wasn't it?
that's a
Yes,
little
it
bit
was.
creepy. He wants to know about a child's dick.
Yes,
Wow,
he
that's,
did. It was a
It wasn't that he
fantastic
wanted to know. He
conversation.
claimed to have intimate knowledge of his dick size. As
So
a
this
was.
child.
guy, he must know a lot about child penises, I guess.
What was great was the
Ugh.
guy's like, I don't know if you remember this conversation. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that conversation. That sucker's burned into my brain. And he spent the whole entire time talking about how he handed me an
He was
L.
right back.
And one of the things that he commented on handing me an L over was the fact that I used lowercase letters for Hillary Clinton. And my reply to him was literally along the lines of, proper English grammar and capitalization is for baristas and various other non-STEM majors.
So what you're saying is that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez probably capitalizes most things.
I am sure that she capitalizes the important things.
I imagine she also capitalizes black and pronouns. You know, because those are the most important things.
They are. They are indeed, especially if you're using my pronouns. It's like the same thing.
Yeah, it is. I suppose so.
My wife told me I'm not allowed to say that at the lab. I'm like, oh.
Well, I mean, maybe sneak it in where you can. Just
No.
But
I
that
am
kind of falls back to the
significantly
whole
more
tact
professional
thing.
when I need to be in a professional setting. It just happens that people sit there and think they can pull one over on me, and it doesn't end well for them.
No, it seems that does not go super well in the times that
It really doesn't. So what I will say to younger folks who are early in their career is you will face idiots. You will face a lot of idiots. They will say stupid things. But as long as you walk the path of righteousness, whatever that path may be, you can walk through fire and never get burned.
Yeah, that sounds like a bunch of bullshit.
It's true. It's true. I have watched NR sit there and come in and have a chat with various people who are questioning what I chose to do.
You see, what I do with the person who says things like that is provide them a large array of hot coals on the ground and tell them to pick the path of righteousness through it.
That's actually pretty easy.
And if they don't just walk around it, then they're fucking idiots.
Look, first off, you can walk over a hot bed of coals.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a crisis.
But the righteous path is to walk right around it.
Or,
and say something to the effect of, hey, you put a bunch of hot coals there. You should probably make sure it doesn't catch the grass on fire.
What if I don't care about the grass?
I mean, do you care about anybody living in buildings?
Well, I mean, the buildings aren't made of grass.
Right.
Yeah, well, they're probably pretty close to it.
Yeah, fair.
Not really.
There are a lot of assumptions that are being thrown in here.
There are a
Yeah,
ton
but
of
in kind
assumptions
of both
that you
directions, you know?
did not state the assumptions at the beginning of your example, so
Purposely
I reject your
so.
example outright.
I mean, this could be on the moon for all we know.
That's exactly right.
That would be hilarious because the other assumption is that you have a spacesuit.
Or oxygen available to light the coals on fire.
I mean, if it was just somebody sitting there and trying desperately to inhale fresh oxygen, only getting their terrible body odor in return.
Well, I mean, and are we talking about, shopping coals?
Well, actually, we did kind of specify there has to be oxygen in the environment to some degree because they're burning
kind
coals.
of did. That's what I just tried to say.
Yeah, we didn't say it right. You need to use proper grammar.
I don't need to use proper grammar. Proper grammar is for baristas.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a barista?
That sounds awfully racist, sir.
I am drinking coffee.
I didn't realize that baristas was a race.
Well,
someone didn't realize that misogyny.
Right?
Apparently, misogyny means racism, and therefore a person hates all black people because of white supremacy. That was what I got from a fucking tweet I saw today, and now that's stuck in all of your heads too.
I didn't even understand it.
Yeah,
well, you see, the funny thing is, the person said misogynoir.
Oh God, I've heard this term.
Which is a combination term, and the person who saw that didn't recognize it, and so like, how does misogyny equal racism? I'm guessing they thought they just spelled it wrong, which is an easy assumption to make.
What is misogynoir?
It's exactly what it sounds like.
Made up
Stupid.
word?
Nonsense.
Noir is in black.
Oh,
Wait,
Not like-
seriously?
Misogynoir is being a misogynist to black women.
No, really?
Google it. Have fun.
Oh man, I thought it was something. I thought these
No,
people
this
were
is-
at
this
least
is
one
like-
step above that. Come on.
This was mainstream Circus Sarkeesian debut. So
I mean,
like,
I've
this
heard the
is
term.
one of-
I never
this is
even
not an old,
put
not
that
an
together.
old
That's
term,
so
but it is an old
stupid.
term.
Good
Yeah.
God, that's really
Well,
dumb.
all
Yeah.
I can say is my first
It's also
girlfriend was
fetishizing French. Isn't that funny?
my first girlfriend was black and Hopi, and every time I've tried to interact with these people, and they're like, "You hate black people," I'm like, "I literally dated one for 2 years." So, you hate indigenous people? Yep, I got to check off those 2 boxes. Thank you very much.
So, speaking of stupid, got an article out of New York Post. I linked this up like 2 or 3 days ago. So, some
New York
guy.
Post usually does decent stuff. How can you say that they're stupid?
Oh, they're not. It's something stupid that happened. They just happen to be covering it.
Oh.
So, guy goes in for his vaccine shot. They set him up with Moderna.
Uh-huh.
He comes back. They give him the Pfizer.
That's stupid.
It is. And I've heard some tales that you
Did
really
they
don't
blame
need to be
him for it?
mixing these. No, it actually did come to them. And the long and short is the guy gives him the thing, and he's like, oh, I may have screwed up. I'm sorry. It turns out that this is actually okay because the Pfizer and the Moderna are roughly
They're
compatible.
compatible, but the problem is we still don't have studies on that.
Oh yeah, there's like no
Brand.
studies on this.
Isn't that amazing? The one thing that I,
Oh,
protest.
complain harder.
I'm just saying.
I'm just gonna
I'm-
go ahead and make it about
I'm-
me
I'm
instead
gonna-
of this
I'm
person.
gonna sit there happily in my chair, not worried at all about somebody sitting there and fucking up medication.
Well, this is
What?
another reason why. Actually, this is a pretty decent segue. There's not really much to talk about there,
Well-
other than that they fucked up. But we are seeing something interesting with the Janssen vax out of Johnson & Johnson, where we have one basically specific incident in one place with,
Huh.
I believe it was 8 women who were on all the same
So
birth control, if I'm not mistaken. They all
no,
suffered blood clots.
so I don't know if more information has come out since the ACIP meeting. The ACIP is the advisory committee on something or another, basically the vaccines after they've already been approved. So the CDC's advisory committee, they reviewed. So I had a thread on Twitter where I went through before and after the committee meeting, describing kind of what we knew and what the data would show, and then what was shown in the slides and what was important from them. Basically, they delayed having a decision on whether or not to leave the pause in place or not by a week to 10 days to allow them to gather additional data. But in the slides, there was only one additional beyond the original 6, and only one person out of the original 6 was known to have been using hormones, so estrogen, progesterone, and that'd be likely for birth control.
Oh, okay.
So,
So there's one person on birth control theoretically, so one person on hormones. The 7th person that was included at the end of the slides was in their 50s, so outside of the 18 to 48 age range. And this subset, by the way, so just to get the point across that it's not a 1 in a million thing, it's more like probably 1 in 200,000 or less than that. The vast majority of people that are vaccinated are above age 50. And so far it's only been women, and it's CVSTs, cerebrovenous sinus thrombosis, so blood clots in the veins leaving the inside of the brain.
so and I want to.
Those are very much not the same as the kind of thromboemboli that you're going to get from a clot in the leg from birth control making its way up to your brain.
I want to toss out something here too. Is that when we start talking about the risks associated with that, a lot of people made a lot of hay about the fact that it's 1 in a million. The reality is that as much as these are the specific cases where we've identified this happening, there is likely additional data that they have in the background that is more cause for concern. And like we do
and
have
actually put in the slides. I can
they,
actually post a picture into the chat. One second, let me go to my
but
desktop.
they're still not going to be posting all of the data.
No,
right?
but they had enough data. So, like I said in my Twitter thread, they're going to post anonymized data, or they said they can, and they did post a substantial amount of data on the patients, given privacy concerns.
So what is going to be highlighted by the media is going to be these 6 or 7 individuals where they've identified it. But what's not going to be highlighted by the media is the people who are reporting symptoms that are very, very similar to clots. And what you will run into, and why people are pulling something for clots, is clots can produce something known as a TIA.
This is why, right here. In the best case scenario for what they show here, the lowest ratio. So there's an expectation for background, and you want to be at equal to or less than that with a product in order to be able to guarantee that you are not causing harm to the general public.
Right.
And then this is a multiple of that value, that background value that's circled in red, for 4 different estimates for background incidence of CVSTs.
Right.
The minimum ratio is 3.8. That means 380%, as in an additional 280% of CVSTs in the subpopulation of study of interest. So,
but there's also they also have that reporting stuff, and they're going to be picking up a lot of other symptoms that they're going to be looking into.
Right. Yeah. So this is an expanded work they've given themselves. They said a week to 10 days to reconvene, so that should be coming up relatively soon.
Right. I mean, it is a very few people who are actually having significant severe effects, but the reason they're pulling it is a clot will manifest in a variety of different ways, and they're not necessarily going to pick it up in all patients because there's going to be a whole lot of people who will be throwing clots, and it won't be noticeable.
Now, as of the Wednesday meeting, there was 1 person deceased, 1 in critical care, and 4 that had been released to go home.
The issue that I would be more concerned of is going to be things like TIAs, though, right? Sure. Which you're not going to actually get a report on.
Here's the other thing: is they all had thrombocytopenia, so a lack of platelets in the blood, but they didn't have DIC, so disseminated whatever the hell coagulopathy. So DIC is when your body freaks out and basically all of the clotting factor gets bound at once, and kind of contrary to your normal thought of what would happen there, the clots are all relatively small, but they can block capillaries and shit. That's a really bad problem. But more so is the fact that all your clotting factor has been consumed, and therefore you can bleed out. So DIC is a big problem, but they didn't see DIC. They just saw
for a short time. Then.
So, but as a consequence, you also lose a lot of your platelets. But they didn't see DIC. They just saw thrombocytopenia, a lack of platelets in the blood, in combination with CVSTs in these 6 women. So that is a more unique combination.
The issue is not going to be these rare cases. It's going to be what's going to happen for minor levels of damage in the general populace if it's happening at a higher rate than this, a higher rate than what would normally be detected, the kind of thing that's going to send you to hospital.
So they've issued some guidance, and you can find the slides pretty easily, or just go to that thread I posted wherever the hell it is. I'm sure if you search my username and then J&J, so J&J, then you'd probably be able to find it pretty quickly. But I linked the slides from the meeting, and this is like slide 20 or whatever the hell it is. It's well down the list. But they went through a lot of the other stuff. They have, patients 1 through 6, or case 1 through 6 listed. They have the different characteristics that they were able to list on there. But that boils down to this picture right here. This is a screen cap I took of one of the slides. And that is that 3.8 is the minimum reporting ratio that they have listed. So the minimum multiple of background incidents that they have listed. So that is 3.8 is big. That's the reason why they got interested in the first place. So it's not 1 in a million. It's 3.8 times background in the population of interest. That's unacceptable. Is the politest way to put that.
Well, and their expectation was...
Now, there could be that they have multiple intersecting subpopulations that have separate incidences of different pathologies at play that results in a common symptom, so CVST. And if that's the case, then the incidence that they have to benchmark against is even lower, and the probability of having a reporting ratio greater than 1 goes down. So if it turns out that these are separate incidents with separate causes, separate diseases, separate things that might have been triggered, separate things entirely, if it's just a coincidence that 6 women had a problem relatively shortly after they got vaccinated, then this vaccine will probably be back on the market. My main concern with this vaccine being taken off the market right now is that a lot of people, and I think it's perfectly reasonable, don't want to take the mRNA vaccine, and this is basically the alternative that was available.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. As a matter of fact, I have even heard reporting that there's a number of people who were scheduled for the Johnson & Johnson and have been presented with the opportunity to take the Pfizer or Moderna.
Yeah.
And are just saying,
and they won't.
No, thank you.
And which is fine. And to be, you got to keep shit in context with this kind of stuff. You don't have to be anti-vaccine to have questions. And if your questions are not satisfied by the answers available, and you have a preference for a vaccine, like you're between being a rational person and having the rock and hard place decision there. You can't really, beggars can't be choosers to a certain extent. But at the same time, you have a choice of what to put in your body. So if you don't want to put a vaccine in,
for that matter.
I think it's a stupid decision. It's my personal opinion, but I'm also not the one who's injecting vaccines into their body if it's not my body. It's not my choice to make. I think again, it's a stupid choice not to put a vaccine in you because it does exactly what getting exposed to the disease would do, except without pesky thing of having the goddamn disease. But again,
yes and no. There's other things that they put into a vaccine. There's a bunch of other potential side effects that come from the various compounds that you're injecting. There's a lot of other risks. Now, in reality, most vaccines,
without rehashing everything, without rehashing everything again, though, point being, if it's not my body, it's not my decision as far as what's getting put into it. Period.
Well, and I want to actually...
And I can have my own opinions on that, but it's, again, not my body, and my opinions shouldn't count more than the opinions of the person who is choosing whether or not to get the vaccine.
And that's true for everybody. I mean, even though I am opposed to the vaccine for myself, my wife got it, and I'm not going to sit there and, penalize her in any way for my choice.
You're going to be a dick to her.
I'm going to be a dick to her, but that's just because I'm a dick. That's just
that's not happening already.
That's just because I'm a dick. That has nothing to do with her choice for the vaccine. But I think actually a really good segue here is one of the data points that you brought up earlier, which was on the data points where the New York Times, I think it was the New York Times, wasn't it? Was attempting to make an argument that, so basically they frame it as if it's, as if getting the vaccine or resistance to the vaccine makes you a better or worse person, and they tried to do it as vaccine use versus not associated with Trump votes. The truth of the matter is,
that's just I believe that was the Times.
It is a terrible it's a terrible use of magnifying data.
Yeah, New York Times.
Yeah, that was the part I was most pissed off at the moment, but the morality part of it is also equally disgusting.
So what the New York Times did here is they took a look at the range, which is vaccine hesitancy is not particularly large, right? It's somewhere between 10 to 30%. It's not particularly large. And then they said,
just to short circuit something else here. The funny thing is, the current estimates are that you need 70 to 90% of the population to be vaccinated to hit herd immunity.
Right.
Guess what 10 to 30% gives you?
That's 70%.
That full fucking range, doesn't it?
Right. Right. And that is a whole separate issue. But
right. Anyway.
What they try to frame it as is that Trump voters are somehow hesitant to the vaccine, and that's somehow bad. The reality is that while I did, in fact, as an individual who voted for Trump, I am not hesitant to receive the vaccine because I am anti-science. My entire job depends on me having a very healthy respect for science. The reason that I am not particularly prone to go get the vaccine is because I don't particularly feel that the COVID warrants the risks, and the risk profile that I have as an 18 to 35 year old, or I think I'm 35 now, but as a 35-year-old male in relatively good health, the risk profile for me for COVID is not particularly high. And the risk profile of taking something that has very limited safety testing is, in my perspective, a little bit less desirable. Like, I'm not too worried about the disease hitting me. Yes, it could be a fluke, terrible death. Although, I'm sure, there's a lot of people who would happily cheer that on.
We'd at least get you on stream, because that would be funny.
It would be, right? I'd be coughing up blood and be like, ha ha, I win. But, at the end of the day, like, the risk profile for me is not particularly high. And what ended up happening is because they chose to politicize this, and they did politicize this.
Oh, to say the least.
Ended up
sides, both directions, and there was flip-flops and bounds.
Right.
So there's really, you can't say they never did. It's just not fucking physically possible.
According to Fauci, we don't wear a mask. We do wear a mask. We don't wear a mask, and we wear 2 masks, but we don't wear 2 masks.
Just put the whole fucking box on.
So when we start talking about it, aside from the politicization, what they found early on was that Democrats were literally terrified of COVID, to the point where they were paralyzing themselves and life decisions. And there was a period of time prior to the election where they were concerned that they had scared the Democrats had scared themselves enough that they would actually have lower turnout at the voting booths, and that would cause them to lose the election.
It was right there at the end when they said, "No, go out and vote."
Right, and the reason that they did that was because they were honestly not sure if they would get the numbers that they needed. So
that never stopped them before.
When we start talking about people who are actually concerned with COVID, it really breaks down that something like 95% of Democrats were terrified of COVID, whereas that was only like 45 to 50% of Republicans. That's a huge difference. And that means that blue states are going to be getting all of the, there's going to be a higher demand in blue areas, not because they're anti-vaccine, but solely because their risk profile for COVID is different between these two population groups. And then you start talking about it from the actual perspective of blue states versus red states, and there are going to be different rollout programs. There's going to be more rural areas versus concentrated urban areas. So, of course, you're going to have these differences.
So the funny thing is, the person who posted the tweets, and I assume that they're an author or a contributor, I don't really care at this point, said that they controlled for population density, population sizes, etc., etc. It's like, I don't believe you, is basically my response to that shit.
Yeah, and that is actually a pretty common response. Whenever you see something in the New York Times,
New York Times, famed peer-reviewed journal that is.
Right. It is actually very common when they do this red versus blue stuff that they don't tend to control for population size. They don't tend to control for population area, right? The individual farmer and his family, who are off in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, really don't have any reason to be afraid of COVID. Let's be honest.
Generally speaking, yeah, they're basically isolated already.
If they're basically isolated already,
the vector is going to be the male, and that's sterilized.
Right, and I want to be very clear. Again, this falls into my risk profile, which is the disease is not that scary to me. I don't sit there and I don't generally go out. I'm not partying all the time. It's not my general attitude or perspective or persona. So an individual who happens to be in a really rural area will honestly sit there and take a look. And if you aren't sitting there and saying, my risk of getting COVID is low, my risk of dying from COVID is low, why would I get the vaccine? If you're not sitting there and doing that risk analysis and you're just taking a shot because you've been told to take a shot, you aren't somehow a free thinker, right? Like you're not this grand paragon of wise intellectualism because you've done what CNN told you to do.
But Coca-Cola told me to. They said if I did this, then the riots would stop.
Look, if you get vaccinated, then they'll open up voting in Georgia somehow.
Right.
Well, no, if you get vaccinated, then you're allowed to vote in Georgia.
Well, no worries. They'll actually be sending you out
if you get vaccinated, you're allowed to vote Democrat.
Mm.
They're Republican. They might ask a few questions.
Well, yeah, even if you die.
Vote Democrat and vote often.
And while you're dead.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't want to deny a vote for the dead.
Vote till you drop and then keep voting.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, we had record-setting numbers of Civil War veterans voting this last time through, and I just want to thank them for their service.
I have to say
both sides of the war too. I'm pretty surprised that the
oh
South has
yeah.
so far
I mean,
racism.
congratulations to Joe for getting the turnout. I mean, real bipartisan support from Civil War veterans. Really.
All I can say is that I hope to be a Democrat one day after I'm dead too.
Well, don't worry, you will be.
Well,
I mean, you're in
that's
New
why
York.
They put the steel bars around some graves is to prevent the ballots from coming out.
Well, you have to do something, don't you?
Well, if they play Thriller on election day, then the bars don't do a whole lot. The other zombies come over and pull them.
That would explain a few things. So, it was a thriller night. So, there you go. And as they say, no one was able to save us from the beast about to strike.
And the reason why Fauci should have kept his fucking yapper shut about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, he didn't have a fucking clue. When he's sitting there saying, oh, it'll be a few days, and then suddenly he's saying, oh, we don't know, it might be months or never come back. Like, just shut up. Stop opining in public, as you say.
And as much as again, I'm not going to get the vaccine. I will absolutely say that they should have not necessarily done this huge public stopping of it. Should have reviewed the data and come to their conclusions before they made it.
No, they did the right thing. The problem that they had is that they have an asshole who can't keep his fucking mouth shut, giving opinions so he can continue to be in the spotlight.
Are you talking about Biden?
I'm talking about Fauci. He needs to shut the fuck up. He didn't have a single clue as to what would happen because nobody did. The meeting hadn't happened yet. Nobody had the data available. He sort of shit hadn't seen it yet.
Well, maybe he heard about it in the bathhouse. I mean, he spends a lot of time there. There's a lot of smart people that go to bathhouses.
The CDC is an equal opportunity hiring agency and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised he wouldn't have been for the restoral of Roman-style architecture. I mean, it would remind you of those kind of things, right?
Listen, I would be all for, like, old-fashioned bathhouses. That would be great. Like, could you imagine Roman times? None of that guilt, all of that sex. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, and then there's that happy ending where the volcano erupts and you're dead.
That's only in one place in Rome.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't statewide.
No,
the rest of it
place
had to deal
Pompeii.
with, the Goths. But,
Look,
Goths aren't an issue now.
Rome,
so it's
Rome
fine.
the Empire, my friend. Rome the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Goths, wasn't it? Or was it the Molgoths? I don't know.
For what?
That led to the downfall of the Empire. Or was it the Mongols? It was the Mongols or the Molgoths.
It's because the what's her name invited Genghis Khan to come fuck her, and then she ended up fucking the entire empire by that.
What?
Genghis Khan's girlfriend was was some lady of Rome. At the end, she said, "Come fuck me," basically, and he just kind of showed up with his entire goddamn army.
Well, I mean Genghis Khan did roll pretty deep.
Would pay them off to stay away, and they were like, "Oh well, free lunch."
At the end of the day, the big problem with Rome actually had less to do with which individual civilization attacked them, and a lot more to do with the fact that they outgrew their logistical supply network. Right? Like one of the problems that we have when we analyze these empires is that we look at them as if they're, like one empire ruling things, and we're ignoring the fact that they're kind of like their own organisms in their own right. That was very noisy.
Yes, it was.
Craig.
No, that was me. That
Damn
was
it.
me.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're fucking wrong again.
I'm never wrong. At the end of the day, they essentially outgrew their blood supply because they can't move troops as fast as they want wherever they want.
I'll be right back.
All right. Oh crap, we're unsupervised.
Yeah, we are unsupervised. That means that we can say whatever we want.
No,
I'm just on mute. I'm listening.
This is like when your parents are like, all right, we're leaving the house for 2 days. We want to come back to a clean house, and then you throw a fucking party.
That's right. It's going to be a weekend.
Like, we trusted you. You're supposed to have responsibility.
Yeah, but, I mean, wouldn't it be irresponsible for me to not have that party?
See, that's kind of what I say, because then at least you know where, like, they're having the party, and you know that they're safe and at home. They're not out at some random person's house.
That's right. Like, it's okay if you have to replace the liquor cabinet. Because you know I didn't drunk drive.
Well, you see, it's not okay if you have to replace the expensive part of the liquor cabinet.
Well, it was not mission critical. It was just a parent checking up on me at 1 a.m, so could be worse. I was expecting something bad. I was like, oh crap, who's calling me? And then, oh, the parents. So, kind of, when it's 1 a.m. on a Sunday and the parents call, you
pick up.
Yeah, and I didn't. So he left a message, and it's just my dad wondering if my car's okay.
Oh.
Which, long story short, yes, I don't know what the hell the check engine light is about, but it's coming off and going on, so I've probably got a vacuum leak or something small and stupid. To give some backstory on the
there's a couple different things that could be.
Oh yeah, a whole bunch. I don't particularly care for this, and I'm starting to want to.
Honestly, do yourself a favor. Hop on Amazon, buy yourself a $20 OBD2 system, plug it in, and go grab any one of the free apps on your phone. Read the code, because even if the check engine light is off,
I know the code. It's running lean.
Oh, it's running lean?
Yeah, when that's on. But I can't tell that it's running lean. Like, the car runs totally normal, so...
That's probably true. So I would actually guess oxygen sensor.
That was one of the things that the machine at AutoZone came up with. So that...
Well, it's...
mass airflow meter, maybe. Or
it can be... It can be the mass airflow, but it's very rarely the mass airflow. Mass airflow is actually a pretty clean system because it gets pre-filtered. But the oxygen sensor has to deal. Most likely, it's one of your post-combustion oxygen sensors.
Oh,
because they have to deal.
Yeah, they get coked up.
Yeah, they get coked up.
Oh yeah, no, that would make a lot of sense because I've had some oil issues lately where it was burning. Like,
it's probably an oxygen sensor.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. I'll actually have to pick some of those up then, at least for the one immediately following.
Especially, I'm assuming that it shows a problem initially, but if you drive for a little while, it goes away.
No, it's just been coming and going. Like, if I let it sit for a while, when I start it back up, no issue, and it hasn't been back on since.
It shouldn't have an issue right off the bat. Like, it really shouldn't, and then it should kick on after like 5 to 10 minutes of driving. And then it should go off after 45-ish to an hour of driving.
Yeah, no.
That sounds about right.
So I'm not having that, so I don't even know. I'm even more confused now. But car troubles are kind of spooky anymore. Things are really complicated, and I don't have enough sensors to actually have the answers.
How old is your car?
Oh, 9.
So 11 years old or 12 years old? Yeah, check your oxygen sensors.
Yeah, that would make sense. In all likelihood, they haven't been replaced. And like I said, I've recently had some oil issues that I had a seal around the plugs that had gone bad, so oil was getting down in there and gumming
Yep.
up the plugs. So there's probably a shitload of extra carbon in my exhaust.
Well, and that's what's going to happen is that'll burn off. So it'll initially kick off, and it'll have to get to temp. And during that period, it's going to be throwing soot around the oxygen sensor. So the oxygen sensor is going to get crudded up. Then once it gets up to temp, it should go away. Largely should go away. And then it should come back again once everything cools down and the engine cycles back down and the catalytic converters come back down. So my guess is you're probably talking about a post-cat O2 sensor.
That's pretty reasonable, actually. Very real possibility.
I mean, they're pretty cheap. So if
Well, that's
the
also
problem
kind
is
of
that
pretty
when they
DIY too. You know, all I've got to do is manage to reach it.
well, you get the right wrench. Honestly,
Well, not
it
even
saves
wrench.
you a
It's
lot of
just
time.
leverage, getting underneath of the damn car.
Yeah, that's true. But that's probably your biggest. Like they're what, $20 a piece.
Oh shit. Well then, yeah.
So if it's $20 a piece, you might as well go through and replace them all, because if you've damaged one, you've damaged them all. It's a pretty cheap part. I'm assuming you got a 4-cylinder.
Yeah.
So $80, and you sit there and you hop under the car and you try to get access to it. You'll find them pretty much like right after your cat, and then the harder ones are going to be the ones that are right before your cat. So sometimes they're built directly into the cat, and then they make the catalytic converter and the O2
09, right?
at a different
So 09 is before any of the Obama regulations to like the cleaner, whatever the hell it was.
It doesn't matter. They still have O2 sensors.
Well, I'm saying it's probably not mandated that it be optimized like that, built directly in. So it'd be like
well, from what I'm looking at here, I'm already seeing a YouTube video, and it's 2 minutes and 44 seconds. So
yeah.
Looks like it's a pretty darn straightforward process.
There's going to be some jump cuts in there, probably.
There are, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking for one that is pre-cat and one that is post-cat. Your cats are going to be easily identifiable, and ultimately, like I've done a lot of stuff that is pre. So my wife and my car are the first time we've had cars post 2009, and realistically, the Obama regulations weren't in place right away. They were supposed to be fuel economy regulations. And the car manufacturers basically said that's impossible, and so they perpetually posted it forward. But that doesn't really affect the O2 sensor placement for the most part, because it's just upstream and downstream processing of the cats. All you're really looking for is the amount of excess oxygen coming in. They measure the oxygen that is coming directly out of the engine, and then the amount of oxygen that is in the stream after the engine, which is why you can use gaps or spacers to produce an appropriate mixture. Because as long as if your cats are blown, but you pull it out of the midpoint of the airstream, it doesn't really matter, because the actual O2 will be decreased around the edges of the pipe.
Huh. The more you know.
Yep.
I've really got to put some stuff. Oh yeah, I've got a soundboard. I haven't even put anything on it. Like this board is freaking dope. Aside from the cool mic and everything. So yeah, that being said too, everybody be looking for me to try and actually up my game a little bit with this. So we are gonna try and do a live thing.
So
at some point,
I'm hearing that you're gonna load a bunch of fart noises.
At least
that's
one.
The only thing that actually deserves to be on a soundboard.
Well, the more you know thing, and I think I've got an echo effect that I've never used.
Oh.
No, I'm not going to now. I haven't even figured out all this can do. It's pretty neat.
Fart noises. That's all it has to do.
With reverb. He said it has an echo.
It does. It does. Although I'm not sure how I'd have to. I don't know. I could do a fart noise
it's
and an echo.
It's gonna be like from the cartoons from the '90s in stereo.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I mean, I could really hybrid it and put in a really shitty exhaust from a Honda, which that's like an extended fart.
Oh, sigh.
Late '90s vibes.
Yep.
Very nice. Oh, speaking of cars, so something just happened. What was this? Yesterday, I think there was a crash in I want to say Texas. Anyway, this came out of the New York Times, which they are bullshit. But when they're reporting about things that aren't important, you can actually get reporting out of them. So these two idiots were talking to their wives about this cool Tesla they had and the auto drive feature. And it was later found crashed into a tree with one in the passenger seat and one in the back. So they probably hacked the car
and did something extremely stupid
and paid the ultimate price for their stupidity. So the fire department was saying that they had to spend a few hours putting the fire out, which, yes, lithium battery fire, those are horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Yep.
So I guess the long and short is, if you're going to mod your Tesla, be really smart about it. And also, Jesus, it's your fucking life, people. Don't do this dumb shit. We're not there with autonomous vehicles. We really, really aren't. So don't
But if you ever do it, make sure to film it.
At the very least, live stream it.
Yeah.
So that somebody can record that shit, because we really need to put
posterity.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to preserve your memory somehow. Because you're going to burn up in a big fucking fire.
I mean, aside from the rest of us having popcorn at the ready and a fantastic chuckle, as your last influence in the world is a cautionary tale.
So I just recently did a calc just for shits and giggles. Do you know how big those fucking batteries are?
Big.
Like, they're huge.
Oh yeah.
There is
like,
a lot of lithium in that car.
Yeah.
Like it is a physically large actual thing. Like not just the amount of power, which it's a lot of fucking power. But I mean, it's a physically girthy thing.
Such an understatement with the.
Imagine
really getting short in that battery.
Okay, yeah, it's actually
you turn around and like so this is one of those things that we talked about a little while ago, which is energy density of fuels. So you start talking about like nuclear fuels are like a million times that of chemical bonds, and then batteries are like 600 times that. Well, the end up cost associated with an electric car with all of its efficiencies is that battery is like 100 some odd gallons worth of lithium. That's a lot of fucking lithium. And you can't spray water on it or else it burns hotter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or CO2 because it eats that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're basically left with halon or foam or something.
Right.
And not even all the foam.
Which, by the way, if you if for those of you who are fans of Amazon's, what is it, the not the Amazing Race, but the Top Gear guys, what did they do? What am I thinking? I'm thinking of the show.
What, The Drive?
The Drive? Maybe it's The Drive.
I haven't watched it, but I know that's what they're doing now.
I think that's what it is. It's
which is amazing because they don't intake any modern media. Somehow I'm on top of it.
By the way, that is an amazing show. But in any case, they actually did one where they decided to do a race on a hill, and one guy took his $100,000 electric vehicle on that race, and he drove off, and it caught fire.
Oh.
And the funny part is that so they had a period where they filmed that obviously, and they got him out. And so he comes back to the show later, but they actually do mention it, and there's a couple times where after that accident, you see that he is visibly shaken trying to do some of the stunts and shit that they did with cars. Like, it literally threw him off his game, and you can understand why if you happen to know anything about the basic chemistry associated with lithium batteries. That fire burned hot, and he is extremely lucky to have all of his limbs.
Yeah.
Well, I can say something similar, that having crashed at over 100 miles per hour, it really does it sticks with you for a while.
Yeah.
Well, after 75 miles per hour, you are no longer steering, you are aiming.
It depends on the tuning of your car.
Seriously.
When it's not really tuned, yeah, you really are.
I know that we dive into the science stuff here, but if you want to start talking about like supernatural, spiritual stuff, here I am. I am an atheist. Like that is my chosen religiosity, if you will. But there is a moment that I had where I was in a car and I realized that my brakes had completely failed, and somehow
And then his sphincter shrank shut.
Oh, it shrank shut. I literally thought that I was going to hit the car in front of me, and I saw a shot to get into the next lane. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, but I managed. I closed my eyes, and I woke up, and I was exactly where it was ideal with nothing else. I was completely shaken by the entire experience, and if there's ever a moment in which I believe that my character died and I was respawned in the most convenient place to continue on my merry fucking way, it is that moment.
Or
Like
perhaps,
if we are living in a simulation, if there is a god, if this is somehow a perverted form of heaven, I would, and I that came to light tomorrow, it wouldn't surprise me because I know when I would have died.
well, you got to consider you might have just entered bullet time.
That's possible. And for those who don't know, bullet time is technically a thing in which, basically, so we have a large amount of
Holy
processing.
shit, you fucking nerd.
Yeah.
What? It's a real thing.
Wait.
So
really?
so yeah, it is. It's an actual real
There's
thing.
a real phenomena.
So basically, what ends up happening is, so we have a large processor between us, a stimulus, and a response.
About 80
Right.
milliseconds worth of processing.
About 80 milliseconds worth of processing. Yes, that's about right. So what ends up happening is if you happen to be in a life-threatening emergency situation, your brain says, fuck all of this bullshit. I do not need to know the physics of what's about to happen. I need to be able to stab the thing that's in front of me, right? And so basically your brain can enter a mode of thinking in which literally it appears that time slows down solely because you have switched away from the logical processing that comes from your prefrontal cortex and into stimulus response mode.
You have gone back to reptilian brain at that point.
Right.
And unfortunately,
A
that makes
really
people
good
very
analogy for
stupid.
that is kind of the way that a high-speed camera works.
It is. Well, it's
Without the fidelity.
Right.
Sure.
Exactly. Well, no.
I
I
mean,
that's
you
actually pretty
still
accurate. You
maintain
can't
it.
get that. You don't get really good HD out of one of those cameras. You just don't.
It is more along the lines of you are like the actual perceived time between imagery you get is significantly extended. So you're still getting the flashes and the neural impulses at the rate that they transmit through your brain, but at the same time, because your conscious perception of the stimuli is at X, you have a long period of time between this conscious perception of stimuli and the next conscious perception of stimuli, which results in technically the ability to do all kinds of crazy, amazing physical things, which do keep you alive, right? It is important to keep you alive in these situations, but at the same time, you would not be able to solve a complex math equation when you're in that state.
No, I don't think so. Not. You might be able to, but you would have
Let
to train
alone
for it. I
speak
don't even
good
know if we
English.
have the training methods to do something like that.
When you start talking about something like bullet time, it would literally be the case of you are in a hail of gunfire from an opposing side, and you will have the ability to duck out of cover.
You can flail your limbs pretty easily.
No, you can target, aim, acquire target,
sure,
aim,
but you
those kinds of things.
You can do motor things because your motor cortex is basically built right into your brainstem.
Right. So you would be able to, like, let's say you had 5 or 6 people, you can actually enter that like superhero mode where you basically take out 5 or 6 people in bullet time. But at the same time, like exiting bullet time is hard, and there's a reason why we have our prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
Indeed there is. But yeah, I mean that tunnel vision and that flow, as some people call it, that's all kind of one thing, and you can kind of train to it, but you also kind of can't
No,
because it's kind of
can't. That's
physiological.
like the only way that you get there is with an unprecedented amount of adrenaline. And oh yeah, by the way, you're basically your prefrontal cortex says fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where your body's so freaked out that it just starts shutting down the unimportant stuff.
Right.
So I guess the key takeaway from that is remember to train, because it could save your life one day, especially if you train things into muscle memory.
Yeah, muscle memory is more likely to be the kind of thing you're going to retain.
Well, it'll be, so again, you'll be able to execute skills that you've done before for sure. But it is your thought process is, I am here, I need to be here. And if that was bullet time that I was in, right, that's entirely possible.
All the more reason for you to kind of blacked out a bit for it too, The body says, drive car to place safe, go now.
Yes. Yes. You need to squeak in between these two vehicles in order to get the extra 2 car lengths worth of stopping distance, yes.
And you probably weren't even listening to any super Eurobeat at the time, so obviously your conscious mind wouldn't have been able to comprehend such a magnificent maneuver.
Well, I will say that is the closest I have ever had to a religious experience. And if, as much as I consider myself an atheist, if all of a sudden God himself parted the heavens, walked down and said, I exist, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense.
I mean, I would have questions.
Yeah, me too, but, fair enough. Fair enough.
What kind of drugs were you on at the time?
None.
Because if God parted the heavens, you can't do it. Never mind.
Yeah, that's getting well off into some very weird weeds.
Not the fun kind of weeds either.
No, not particularly. Not particularly at all. So
that kind of weed damages your brain.
Oh, it doesn't damage your brain.
Yeah, it fucking does.
No, it doesn't.
Yes,
all right,
it does.
Janet Reno.
Yeah.
And I've only looked at peer-reviewed research on the matter because I was like, that sounds stupid too.
Except I've looked at peer-reviewed research on the matter too.
I have a whole fucking folder of it. You want to read it?
Sure. Link me.
Okay. Hold on a second. Let me just... it's in my Dropbox. I can put the link in here. Dropbox... Blah, blah, blah. Where the fuck did I put this?
Well, this is probably going to have to be a conversation for another time because I have.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm going to actually have to read the research.
And
this is going to go.
Because I read.
This is a smacking of papers. Some of these papers are even contradictory, but it's a whole fucking folder on this because I heard this. I was like, all right, this sounds stupid.
So then, what I have read says the following: that as soon as you get through like 75% of your brain development, if you're in the 19 to 20 time frame, it's not really a big deal.
So
that being said, if you're 20,
you're a little bit early on that.
Fucked up.
You're a little early on that. It seems like between 25 and 30 is kind of the gray area where the issue drops out. And then it's only for heavy, like really fucking heavy users after that.
Yes.
But if you're smoking a joint once a month and you're over age 30, nothing's going to happen to you. Like there's just not evidence to show anything's going to happen. Period.
Well, from what
if you're 16 and you are a moderate user, you are literally you are fucking your brain up.
That is true. I will concede on that point. But from what I've seen, if you are in the 18, 19, 20 time frame, and you are using on a regular basis, but you're not a heavy user. And by the way, when we start talking about heavy users, I had a friend who would get up in the morning, smoke a bowl, get into a car, drive to school, smoke a bowl. If you're in that portion of the crowd,
if you're putting Willie Nelson to shame.
Right. If you on the other hand come home and you smoke a bowl before bed, that's not like a crisis moment.
So they have so the words heavy user and stuff like that, they have some frames of reference in the articles I just linked to you. But yeah, that's the
Well,
the
seeing as
folder
we're
on
going
it.
to probably have to dig into this for an episode of its own, because it's really worth it just to go over everything
Sure.
from the medicinal to the.
I had to fucking read.
I mean, there's
again.
really a.
It's been a
This is
little while.
actually a topic totally worth going into. Aside from
But yeah,
like the
this
whole
is one of the
climate
reasons
thing.
why things like vaping, aside from the obvious problems that come with that, is still better than smoking. Not by much, because you're still fucking your lungs up. Well, look, you're inhaling propylene glycol. It's a safe thing to eat. It's not safe to inhale any more than it's safe to inhale water.
But at the same time, again, when we start talking
So you're
about
saying
like
vape
lung
dry-
damage,
Gotcha.
there's a fundamental difference between something like moderate, irritant and like actual caustic smoke.
Well, here's the thing: is if it irritates the cells to the point where they undergo any form of apoptosis, you end up with the same exact feedback mechanisms that come into play that could cause cancer later. That's not saying vaping is going to cause cancer, because there's zero evidence of that.
Except
zero evidence of that.
Well, there's more to that. There's more to that than that, right? There's actually very limited evidence that marijuana use will actually cause cancer. That's not
Actually,
to say
there's fantastic
Hold on.
evidence that any smoke will cause cancer.
Hold on. Marijuana smoke does not cause cancer. It does cause
Yes,
other
it does.
problems, though.
Now, we know the mechanism that causes cancer. Small cell lung cancer is caused by a very well characterized set of circumstances that any smoke can cause. Now, smoke that involves a tar that sticks to the lining of your lungs is worse, but any smoke is going to cause cancer eventually if you repeatedly expose yourself to that.
The last time
one of the people who did the research was the guy who taught my bio for engineers course at UF. He didn't want to teach the course, so he decided to talk about that the first day. They know the mechanism.
When the last time I really dug into this stuff, and now admittedly this is a while ago, right? It was 2008, and at the time, so unless this might be something that's newer, but at the time the research was such that it didn't. There were other lung diseases that were very prevalent with marijuana smoke. But ultimately, nicotine and like cigarettes actually cause significantly more damage, and that has to do with the fact, partially because the nicotine itself acts as kind of a it decreases the movement of the cilia. So what ends up happening, right? So what ends up happening is whatever. So actually, if you start talking about any form of IH hazard, right? If you smoke with with radon gas, if you smoke with asbestos fibers, if you smoke with any of this stuff, it actually increases it by anywhere between 7 and 10-fold your risks of developing negative conditions associated with it. And marijuana smoke does not have the same, because it doesn't have the nicotine baked into it. It doesn't produce the same effects. That being said, there were other lung diseases that did come with heavy use, but it had to be excessively heavy use.
So again, any smoke. This is why I recommend to my friends, if they tell me that they're going to do pot or whatever, I say, if you guys just take an edible or something. I know it's not the same high, I get it, and I know there's a body high versus just the smoking high, but smoke. So you have the large squamous cells, right? You have the basically the surface layer of your lungs. They sit above columnar small cells, and small cell lung cancer is caused by a positive feedback loop driven by growth factor that is released by the large surface cells when they are damaged. And the large surface cells have a secondary feedback loop, negative feedback loop built on top of that to limit their growth once they butt into each other. Small cells don't have that. So when the damage pierces down through the however many layers there are of these large these large square cells, the squamous cells, when it gets to the small cells, when enough of the growth factor is present after enough time, they will form a tumor because they'll just be growing out of control. And that's that's a precancerous tumor. And once that gets to a certain critical size, it starts gathering resources to itself and becomes eventually metastatic cancer.
What year is this that they found that?
So I think I took that course in 2011.
So that would have been, if he'd done that, that would have been a reasonable period of time between when I did my research and that.
But it was kind of hot off the presses from 2010.
Yeah.
And it, like, this is the thing. The mechanism is it's absent any other criteria. It just has to be that the cells get damaged in some way and start trying to repair themselves. And if they are prevented from adequately repairing, or they form scarring tissue, and then that is allowed to get deep enough into the lung tissue,
yes, that's
it
true.
will cause cancer.
But
so
there are a variety of different methods.
So like I said, if you are smoking anything, that is a increased risk of cancer by this mechanism. Period.
So
smoking normal cigarettes, the tobacco cigarettes, is way worse for you than marijuana.
Well, and again, there are
orders of magnitude here, but like
there are other ways in which you can reduce that risk, and most people who happen to be partaking in the substance are doing that. Things like a bong does 2 levels of filtration and subtracts out significant amounts of heat. Right, so basically, I mean, and this actually is kind of funny. You see something like somebody explaining a bong to a chemical engineer, and you're like, yeah, okay, so got it. You're running it through a water column. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? I guess that's an interesting way of putting it.
It really is. It's like, see these people.
This is a basic unit op. You do this shit.
I spent so much money on this. You're like, got it. So all you've done is
increase a big straw.
Water column. Yeah. But so there are ways to reduce it, and you can also do things like
I'm not saying like so everybody has to pick their poison.
Yep.
Eventually, drinking enough alcohol is going to give you cirrhosis. Eventually, eating too many Big Macs is going to give you diabetes and the inability to breathe.
Though the question is there a level at which you can sustain it?
This is going back to that same risk assessment thing that we talk about ad nauseum.
Yep.
If you don't know the risks, like people didn't know, for instance, back when cigarettes became popular, that you'd have this lung cancer issue. People didn't know back when marijuana became more popular as an alternative that the risk wasn't eliminated, as they fondly and often say. The risk is still there. It's not the same level of risk. And then, as far as the brain development, it disrupts the long range connectivity of the brain, depending on your development and depending on the amount of usage. Like the damage you can do if you are a heavy smoker at 16, by the time you are 20, is the same as if you're a heavy user from like age 25 to age 65. It is dramatic. The damage it does. So I mean, it one of the ways you can explain the paranoia, and this is at this point my own hypothesis on this. It's not in any way, as far as to my knowledge, clinically studied. Part of the paranoia issue you get network decoherence in the brain from having these long range connections anesthetized, and that's. Basically what you see is a decay in these long-range connections. The long-range synapses will weaken and die in young brains.
Now, the thing about that, though, I mean, generally the
local
paranoia
connectivity is still intact.
Very temporary, though.
Well local connectivity is still intact. So the point is that the anesthetizing these connections prevents them from firing. And if they don't fire, they wither and die.
Well, yeah, but I mean, paranoia is not really a thing that.
Yeah.
That's not a thing that lasts. It's not something you hear about.
Right. No. What I'm saying is that this disruption of long-range connectivity could explain that.
if you were to sit there and talk about the average high is anywhere between 4 and 6 hours, depending on
Yeah.
how much you smoke and what strain you smoke and the concentration and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, the paranoia phase is more of a phase of the drug itself.
Right. It's
So the
one of the
initial-
plateaus you go through. I get it.
The initial phase is very much heavy giddiness, and that lasts for almost, of the 4 to 6 hours, it'll last probably 4 to 5 hours of that period of time. And then there's a very short window of paranoia before you come back to being
So-
stable.
In any event, the takeaway from this is that there's a physiological, physical, measurable difference that happens depending on amount of usage, point in development that you use it, the length, the amount of time that it has been used, etc.
Or
So
basically, just don't let
there's-
your kids do drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it boils down to.
Long and short, don't let your kids
Actually,
do drugs.
it actually has, I think it has more to
Or
do
not
with
much
which
drugs,
which portions of the brain it ties into.
Well,
So
the thing is this long range connectivity effect seems to be kind of global. Which is really bad.
I mean, there is a specific series. I mean, I've got an article here actually. It's this, but it's the amygdala that it binds to that, and it means that your amygdala, which is designed specifically for anxiety, stress, and
God,
paranoia.
Fucking shit ass pronunciation.
You know what? I don't really give a shit about you and your pronunciations. You get really
It's the
upset.
amygdala. God damn.
I think it would
whatever.
actually be enunciation as opposed to pronunciation, if I'm being
That would probably be
completely
more
pedantic.
accurate. That's correct.
Oh, is it there, Mr. Grammar?
Well, it's a matter of putting the
I'm
wrong
having
emphasis
trouble taking
on
this from a
a
non-English
different
major.
syllable,
You know what? That's okay.
But this is
You
we've
know
gotten
what?
into such a weird and pedantic conversation here. Like the whole thing has gotten so meta and pedantic about smoking.
Yep.
And I mean it really, I'm the line. This is actually a good conversation, but I think it deserves its whole own show because there's so much here.
We've got
Yeah,
like
I actually
7
recommend
of these topics.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, we've
recommend
only
also,
just
Evan,
scratched
that
the
you go ahead
surface.
and give these a read because I think that you might find these interesting.
Yeah, maybe so.
If you go through, I can't remember the order in which I got these, and again, some of these papers are gonna be contradictory.
Well,
Because I just pulled a bunch of them and tried to figure out what was going on.
True of almost all cannabis research, and part of that is because cannabis research is explicitly funded by the United States government, and as such,
Sure.
they cater to that.
So the technical and neuroscience aspects of things is going to be more in line with what you'd probably be able to call the truth, whereas any of the other stuff is going to be largely subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So
we can look at
that's
the
the kind of stuff you
CDC's
focus on.
research on gun violence and find that it was incredibly inconvenient, but it never gets framed in an accurate light. Funny
Oh God,
enough.
I love that. I love the study of the fucking assault weapons ban.
Oh yeah, the part where
Oh,
they had
look,
to change the metrics.
It got worse.
Yeah, they had to change the metrics of figuring out how violence was done in America once they did the assault weapons ban because it
And
got
then
worse.
they found out that once the ban ended, things got better again. What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, that's really funny. I mean, Chicago's a hellhole, but I'll tell you what. Shortly after they allowed concealed carry to just happen, they noticed a surprising decline in violence. Then they got things back in order and made it harder for people to defend themselves, and the violence went right back to where it normally is.
Yep.
You know what? I believe I fixed my hot plate issues.
Ooh, congratulations!
I only have one tiny strand of fiber between all of my little things, so it appears that everything works.
Ah, excellent.
I've got nice clean edges. Beautiful. I think my attraction settings are all set.
Yeah, now I've got to get mine working. I went to a lot of trouble to build this thing.
Those are the nicest friggin' prints that I've had. I'm gonna actually. So actually, while you guys are here, do any of you guys have a particular cable chain that is better than other cable chains?
There's one on. So Well,
I
the
do not.
one I printed out is specific to the printer bot metal, but there was the chain on that one is good. If you look, you just find any of them on Thingiverse.
So I printed out some cable chains and they didn't do great. Honestly,
So I think
they were like super shitty.
So another thing is if you print out alternating links at a TPU, and just again do the 100% infill thing, then they come out pretty good. So that they don't booger up the hard plastic when you're trying to snap it in place, and they're stiff enough that they don't come apart. It's when you start doing like the hollow infills that you end up with the extremely flexible TPU.
I mean, if you're
items.
doing something like that, that's a wear part. You're definitely going to want to use a full infill on that.
Well, the more issue that I've had is just getting them to align properly without curving, and that could just be a print thing. But they curve left to right, which is a little bit weird. And then on top of that, they're not staying locked together as well as possible. Now, granted, again, I just finished my retraction settings.
What was the layer height used?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that could be warpage.
It's whatever
too.
the default STL file came with.
No, that's not what sets the layer height.
Then it's whatever is default to Repetier.
So 0.2?
Probably.
That's shit.
Let me take a look here, and I'll actually give you an answer. Let me go into my slicer settings.
Because what you should do is use the smallest layer height you can tolerate.
So it looks like the quality is 0.2 by default. I'm not sure if that's
0.2 millimeters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to use more like 0.1 or 0.05. It'll take
on that
a
note,
while longer.
I've got some really cool nozzles that'll be on the way, which is the other reason that I haven't been really too quick to get this together is that I've got a set of nozzles and another set of ends coming.
So will a 0.4 millimeter nozzle be able to do a 0.05 millimeter print?
Yeah, just.
Oh yeah, that's just how. I mean, that's just the width of the stuff coming out. Yeah, the nozzle height's going to be a lot more of the resolution as well.
Yeah, the layer height is just the height of the layer. It's not. It has nothing to do with the nozzle diameter. Save that you can't go greater. Well, there's some other caveats to have on this, but just as a hard limit, you can't go greater than the width of the nozzle. You can't go more than one diameter in height for the layer. Otherwise, you have zero contact, and you're dragging a string along the floor at that point. In principle, you should probably stay underneath a half diameter, but like with a 0.35 millimeter nozzle, you can print 0.3 millimeter height layers just fine.
Yeah, so you can go thinner, you just can't go thicker.
So you can actually. So there's a fudge factor called I think it's called the extrusion factor, which is basically the amount of material the printer thinks it's extruded versus what it actually extruded. And if you're running into like thin walls or something, you can bump that factor. Usually it's set to 1. You can bump that factor up a little bit and have it over extrude slightly to keep up with a lack of material that's in place. You can theoretically print a layer that is larger than 1 nozzle diameter using that as a fudge factor and get away with it, but your print would be shit. That's the simple description of the problem.
So if I have a 0.4 nozzle, I can print 0.05, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could print 0.39. I really wouldn't, but yeah, there you go.
But
Basically, it's
0.05. So here's the thing: your z-axis resolution is going to be the limit for your layer height.
that's going to be
but
determined more by your machine than
right.
anything
So
else.
the Acme threaded screw that's used for your z-axis control, more than likely than not, is going to be what determines that. And so, for instance, my printer bought simple metal is theoretically only capable of doing a millimeter layer height, but I can actually do 0.05 because the Z control is just the one direction. So the key thing to take away from that is that the backlash of the screw moving the print head around has to be smaller than the layer height you're trying to go for. So the resolution that is specified for a screw like that is going to be a function of the backlash. It's not necessarily going to be exactly equal to the backlash. So if you know the backlash of the coupling that it is running up and down the screw, and you can basically measure that by just trying to lift the print head up a little bit and seeing how much it lifts on the screw. So not a whole lot's really the ideal, but there's always going to be a little bit of backlash on these things, a little bit of clearance for the threading to work properly. It's not as bad as like having gearing, where you have a true backlash, but there's going to be some backlash.
I'm pretty happy with mine. It's actually really adjustable, so I've got essentially no backlash that I can detect, like just by hand. I mean, there is some there. There just is, because I'm not gonna put it in to where it starts dragging on stuff.
Right.
Because
So
there is that balance.
If you want to do something like that, what I'd also suggest is using a raft. If you're worried about dimensional stability.
I fucking hate rafts. They waste so much plastic.
Yeah, but they also prevent you from wasting even more plastic by doing more failed prints.
Well, we were actually talking about this beforehand, and the man makes a good point. It's kind of just worth it to have your own extruder if you're going to be doing a lot of printing.
Oh yeah, I'm probably gonna build something. There's there are some cheap. I was doing some research and I found some cheap extruder blueprints.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I saw the most epic of things, which really looks like it's like a Fanta bottle or something like that is involved in the extruder process. And he's like, it's for $130. I'm like, holy shit, that's pretty amazing. He turned garbage into useful equipment.
I mean, that's proper engineering, MacGyver wasn't
Yeah,
genius.
It is. I mean, so I'll probably build something like that. Like, at the end of the day, I'm not planning on... you will have, like, anybody who sits there and undertakes 3D printing, if you think that you can sit there and study all this stuff and not get failed prints, you're wrong.
Yeah, I know my first tugboat's going to be garbage.
The default settings are terrible. So
don't even go for the tugboat. Just get yourself a calibration cube.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna.
I actually didn't go for a calibration cube. I got one of those multi-dimensional 3D print things.
Yeah, I was thinking I'd actually get one of the calibration things that's got the steps.
So
and the
what I did is, mine came with the calibration cube printed on it, and so what I did immediately was print the box from Portal.
No.
The companion cube.
No, right on. Well, that's a classic.
And then I printed a companion dodecahedron, because that exists.
Well, geometry geeks are going to be geometry geeks, so of course it does.
Mm-hmm.
Can't just have a companion cube. I'm
and
sure somebody's got a companion sphere.
A short little series of low polygon Pokemon that I printed out of TPU for the nieces and nephew.
That's one of the other things that I'm really liking for this, because I got a couple of nieces and nephews that I think I'll be able to make some really cool shit.
Oh, they get a real crack at it if you. So what you gotta do is be careful that you don't print something with like sharp angles to it. But if you can print something that has soft surfaces to it out of TPU, so it'll be squishy, and then there's just enough of air gaps that is kind of built into the way that the plastic melts together, that it's not only squishy, it'll make a whistling or wheezing sound when you squeeze it.
Huh.
So you don't even need to like add anything into it. It just kind of does that on its own.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I was sitting there, I had a fucking Charmander I was murdering repeatedly. Like a stress relieving toy. It was wheezing like it was dying, and I was laughing my ass off the first time I got that thing printed.
Well, there is something to be said for a good stress toy.
Well, I was gonna give it to at the time just my nieces, and they're just like, well, it has this tail that's probably not good, and then because it had more structural support and geometric support at the place, it was not very squishy there. So that became a maybe toy for later, but probably not.
Fair enough. And
But
here's another
the
topic
low polygon,
that we really need to do a whole show on.
Well, so like low polygon items you can find on Thingiverse. Just type in like low poly, and it's it doesn't have to be Pokemon. Those people have made a fuck ton of those. There's all kinds of low polygon items.
Amazing place. You can find just about anything. You can find gun parts on there.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta go actually once I get everything dialed in, I'll start doing that was what I spent Friday doing, and then I realized I was having problems with my heated bed, though it looks like I repaired that. I am definitely interested in trying to get myself, especially for the next time that New York chooses to do one of those gun buyback things.
Oh yeah, you got to take some lowers down there.
Well, I think they have to work. So what
you see, that's not your problem. If the lower, so here's what you do: you take the rest of the gun and then just a series of lowers, and then you say, "I will sell you the lowers," and that's it.
Well, I mean that's the only part that's the firearm. So yeah.
I suppose it depends on how they stipulate things as to how.
Although with all the dumb bullshit going through the ATF right now, we might see that change in the near future. So who even knows?
The stipulation is typically that it works. So they have done gun buybacks before.
Really vague.
Well, I mean, they
conveniently.
Well, just print out 3D printed, do 3D printed fire groups too, so that it's got the whole shebang. Doesn't say how many times it has to work. Right?
Just print out a bunch of fucking liberators with
there you go.
Shitty infill.
Problem solved.
With like no infill.
It's like, yeah, you can test them all if you want, but they work.
Use like a piece of bored out PVC for the or maybe just like some hardware store PVC pipe for the barrel.
No, it has to be rifled. So you will actually have to print it.
Okay, well then use a screw to rifle it.
Who the fuck does this? So I got this part here that I got to print out, and it's a test. And somehow they decided to like design it and leave it in the STL file as if it's like vertically oriented.
They can rotate.
Well, see,
but yeah,
that's a test in and of itself too. You have to be able to figure out how to orient the thing, otherwise you're not smart enough to use it, right?
Not every CAD uses the same machine axis, which is stupid, but that's the way it is. It's like Betamax versus VHS, but instead there's three brands.
And this is kind of thing. Like I'm actually having to physically rotate. Like I'm in Cura, and Cura doesn't allow me to manipulate the axis as much as I would like.
You go into the thing and you put numbers in.
It's actually not letting me do that right now.
Well, what did you do to fuck it up?
Well, hold on. Before we get into tech support stuff. We've pretty much wrapped everything we need to for the show.
I think this is the part where I've also got to go to bed.
So we'll say our goodbyes and our tech support after. But it's been a pleasure talking to all you good folks. Make sure you give us a follow.
There is a snap to face or option for
Kara.
Oh well, that's dope. That's convenient.
That is fantastic.
It'll suck it right down to the bed, and then you just rotate it, and it snaps right there.
Problem solved.
Yep, that is problem solved.
I'm glad I did all the hard work here.
Oh,
you didn't
do
shit. I figured that
Invoices out. Invoices in the mail. So, give Craig a follow at CraigBob99. You can give Steve a follow at RatBand720. He's probably not going to respond to you or even care. But if you want to, whatever. And you can give me a follow at that fake guy Dan on all the regular media and alt media and I don't know, anywhere that shows up, I'll probably get myself on there. And let's all cross our fingers that I can make this into an even less shit showy and more fantastic big show. So I'm working on it.